All right, we're going to get things going here. We're starting early at 6 p.m. for the Town Council to review its goals and objectives for the 22 to 24 term. And as we get started here, I just want to allow Jim Manny to kick this off, the little introduction of this meeting.
Thank you, Council President. This is long overdue, this meeting and this work session, and apologize it's taken us till April to get here, but as you know, there's been a lot of stuff going on, so, but it's not been lost on from day one. Am I getting feedback here, Greg? I think it's this mic. I think we had feedback on this mic before. How's that? Is that better? Yeah, that is better. So, just being here for just under a year now, just about a week to before under a year, I kind of know what your goals and objectives are and the council from day one, but it needs to be formalized, and this is what this work session is all about. You will notice that 3 council members submitted their goals and objectives. A couple didn't, and that's what their preference was, to just talk about it once what they saw what everyone had to offer. So I want to thank Colleen, first of all, for coming tonight. She's leaving tomorrow on a trip, but she did volunteer to come tonight and take good notes for us. So what the expectation is, we'll talk about it tonight, discuss it, the council will. Good notes will be taken. We'll submit the rough draft to you, what everyone has to say, and then we can fine-tune it at a later date, and probably within a month is when we could formalize the goals and objectives in this format that was used last time, which I actually like. It's pretty formal, but it's got everything. So you should have a copy of the 2022 goals and objectives. You have a copy of the goals and objectives submitted by 3 members of this council, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Council President. You can start the ball rolling.
All right, thank you, Jim. So we do have some goals and objectives submitted by a number of council members here. We do also have a copy of the formalized goals and objectives, which is incorporated into the town's budget, which we adopted, I think, in the last term, the prior term. So, does someone want to sort of volunteer to kick things off here as far as what they've identified? I'll just name a few things that we've actually done, which are common here. We set up regulations around a municipal court. We've appointed a municipal court judge. We're still set in hopes to get that up and going by July 1. We've moved forward with the school facilities bond. At least at this point, we're hoping to target to get stage 2 application in and have a bond a bond referendum on that in the fall. I believe November is what we decided. So those are a few things that we've done that I think are sort of in all these lists, which are great. But we still have a few other things, notably for me, homestead exemption I want to explore after we get in line the rental registration. Also a big thing for me in the short term is seeking out that mixed use zoning on Old Tower Hill Road. I know I've been trying to kick that around, potentially talk about getting an RFQ out there to solicit people who know what they're doing specifically with those ordinances. So I'd like to get that rolling, but those are just a few of them. But anyone else, feel free to just jump in.
Sure, I'll go. One of the goals that I listed was to work together on figuring out a better order for the meeting, and Jim had drafted a model agenda. Part of the frustration is that a lot of the business we have and people who come in to address us with respect to that business wind up waiting around for an awful long time, including staff members. One of the suggestions I wanted to talk about was either when a department head has something to say, either put it under the work session or under as part of your report, and that way they can say what they have to say, but they don't have to hang around all night. There may be reasons not to do it, but it's at least one thing that I wanted to talk about. And the other was with respect to public comments. my experience at the school committee is that it's very frustrating for the public if they come in and they actually, at the school committee, they actually sign in and we have a list of people who are going to speak. That, I think, would streamline some things just by virtue of not waiting for people to pick and choose who's going to go next. But it was occasionally frustrating for members of the public to come in, and the period of time that was set aside for public comment came after some of the votes, some of the discussion and debate among the members of the school committee. It seems to me that that should come before substantive votes are taken.
Council President, mind if I just, can I speak a little bit about that? Is that within the realms of this meeting? So I hear you loud and clear on that. So once again, I've been here for a year now, right? And I've seen, a year's worth of meetings. This agenda has something that I haven't seen on a lot of agendas, and it's communications. And most of the talk is generated by the communications and some of the topics. The new business that I've seen come across, it's all about contracts and vehicles and so forth. Very, very little is spoken about that. Now, there's one solution to that I'll bring up later when I address it in my town manager's report, but so it's fresh in your mind. You could have, because our new business section is very small, usually always is, you could have residents come up if they have a question on one in particular, one in between. So if, say there's one thing, it's a $150,000 dump truck, and someone has a problem with that, they could come up and express their concern right then and there, right after that new business is read. But once again, I'll talk more about it later. I don't want to hijack what the rest of that you have here. We'll talk later. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Anyone else want to sort of volunteer, jump in here, say thoughts? Go ahead, Deb.
Thank you for bringing this forward. I had been the person speaking with you privately, just to remind you that we did this in the last council, so I wanted to bring it forward. I'm not necessarily interested in creating a document as bulky as this. I think my feeling with the goals and objectives, whatever we agree to, it would be something that the public would be able to access easily on a website and say, okay, that's what we're working towards. Because this document is multiple pages and it has like timelines and things like that. And we don't need that. We need the community to know what we're working on. And like many of the things that Rory said, I actually agree with. Homestead exemption, municipal court, yep, that's going to get up and running. Rental registration, very important. School facility plan, critical to have that get over the finish line at this point. I've been mentioning the plans to repurpose the buildings. Those take a long time. Affordable housing is something I've been talking about since 2020 and before, trying to move that forward. A lot of those things. And so when the community comes in 2 years and says, what have you done? We all can say, this is what we agreed on and collaboratively worked towards. So I don't think the meeting needs a lot of tweaking. It might need a few minor things. I think in the past, residents have asked if they could speak at a new business item, and previously they were told no. But in previous times to that, they were allowed. So it sort of moved away from the community speaking during new business. We can certainly bring it back. I think I also talked about in my list, expanding our partnerships with URI, the Narragansett Tribe, local businesses, the hospital, the legislature. We have not met with the General Assembly, and we typically had done that in the past to bring that forward again. I talked about the elderly tax abatement, and I know that's on Patty's list. And just like you, Rory, a lot of land use things are a priority to me as well. So I don't necessarily think it needs to be 25 pages, just maybe a list we can agree on.
All right, thank you, Deb. Patty, yes?
Yeah, I agree with Deb. I think it needs to be something that's easily digestible by everybody in the community. Taking the time to read through 25 pages takes time, and not everybody's going to do it. I think that people should be made aware of what we intend to tackle first. what everybody contributed was great. I think that we're all kind of on the same page, so that's great. But yeah, I think it needs to be something a little bit more streamlined.
So I just want to add, so this big document that you're seeing, that's only been in existence for a year. No, I mean this one. Prior to that, they used something more where it was, I think it's more what you're talking about, where, from what Luke told me, this was first year that they had, is that right, Colin? The first year they had this big, long one?
It
No?
might be a couple of budget seasons. I think when we started with the new GFOA standards,
Oh,
or the
okay,
increased
yeah.
standards, that's when we started modifying this document to kind of go along, so it matched up with your budget, because a lot of these acronyms that you use throughout are in the budget document as well.
I don't, just to be clear, I don't necessarily want to sort of do away with the comprehensive, broad goals and objectives, but what we're doing here allows for more tangible, achievable, work within our broad goals to achieve these tangible items that we're working on. That's how I would like to see it. Go ahead, Patty.
I think there's some really great goals in here. I would like to see some of them just updated in terms of, like with the University of Rhode Island, we have some goals on or before July of 2021 for senior services to coordinate with the departments of pharmacy, nursing, gerontology, and nutrition, to create opportunities for students in intergenerational programs to benefit older adults. I'd be very interested in seeing, where those programs are and any similar stuff that we have throughout the document that has specific dates, just kind of update. But I do think of that just a general list.
So to be very honest, I think that that's a perfect one to point out that people have a lot of ideas. It's a wonderful idea. We all could get excited about it, but it's always like the actual execution. To my knowledge, that's never been talked about ever again. And so for me, I don't like to promise what we can't realistically deliver. So that is not happening. It just, someone said, wouldn't it be nice? It would be, lots of things would be nice, but I think it's like what the five of us want to make sure we're moving forward. And that is not, that is, who
Well, I was a gerontology major, so
Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in that.
no, I understand.
So I think it is valuable, and I think that
But
maybe
there's
we
no
could
staff.
extend that down, well,
To me, it's a great idea. It's just not a realistic achievement of this council to pull that off.
it's number 11.
I think we have to look at what we can realistically accomplish in a year and a half.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, but I don't think that necessarily means we should gut everything that's here. There's some good language in here that is broad and not necessarily achievable within a year, but I still support a lot of the stuff that's in here. But I think I agree that in addition to that, we should put together a tangible list of items that we plan and are working to achieve in this term that likely fall within this as well. So I just don't support gutting this altogether. To replace it with a tangible list, I believe in both.
What would the difference be?
The difference would be that the things we're talking about to add would be working almost within this realm to accomplish tangible things. Like, for example, not that we would necessarily have control over this, but something in here about supporting Native Americans and their culture. We would potentially pass a resolution asking the state to consider social equity assistance as part of the marijuana licenses to be given to one of the Native Americans. Like, that's not something we'd put in our tangible items to achieve, but that's something that falls within here it still aligns with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're thinking more of like a supplemental
Yes.
piece?
Yeah. We can fit it within the budget document and put it on the website. So let's start talking more succinctly.
So I just don't think a lot of these things happened. So it's, again, I don't like to falsely say we're going to do these things and they didn't happen at all. The library will conduct a minimum of 12 pop-up libraries at a location specific to vulnerable residents. But I don't want to call anything
mean-
out, but those are,
I think we have to also understand that this was 2020. This was a difficult time. So when were these goals adopted? Like in 2019? Or
no, we did.
During COVID.
during COVID? So that was kind of a difficult situation to make 12 pop-up libraries happen. So it's not like it's
So,
not a criticism of what didn't happen.
correct, but it's also, it's the council's goals and objectives. That is an excellent goal for the library. It doesn't need to be in our list of achievements and goals. Like, these are things that departmental directives and initiatives should come out of, and I'm really focusing very clearly on what the council can move forward, what's under
So-
our control to bring forward to the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of these things may not be applicable anymore, you're correct, but not all of it is inapplicable. And I think it would take a lot more time to scrutinize everything in here to figure out what's not our goal and what's not. But this is a longer exercise, we should take this home and scrutinize this individually. But as far as this meeting, I think we should put together the actual tangible items we wish to achieve in this term. And some of them we've been talking about. Municipal court, get that up and running. That should be on the list. Maybe we could sort of take notes as we go here. We got the ordinance in place. We elected municipal court. We're still on target, hopefully by July 1. That's a goal. Do you agree? All right. Next, once that's set up, rental registration. That's a goal as well. Can't have that in place until that municipal court is up and running. So as I'm talking here, I'm hoping someone just sort of gather.
Oh, you're on,
Keep going,
Right.
Rory. We're not in.
School facility bond.
Yep.
We've moved forward in that. We're still not where we need to be, we're making progress. So that's like another tangible item. Working towards solving the water ban issues. That's going to be a priority as well. Mixed-use zoning, I mean, I think that should be a real short-term, we should get that done soon, at least get the RFQ out for that on Old Tower Hill Road.
Yes. So if we didn't have this conversation, we would not all agree on the 10 or 11 things that we want to advance.
or we might agree, but nobody would know that
Right.
that's what we all agree on. So that's why
It's-
we need something supplemental,
It's,
more streamlined.
it's for the community for them to say, what do you plan to accomplish? So in 2024, in November of 2024, we could say, we moved these things forward.
We don't have to scrap this.
We don't have to
This
scrap
can
it.
be
It's just not,
something that is, goes from council to council, like that we hope where we leave off the next council continues, right? But I think, you were on a roll with that, Rory, like those
There's
are
more here.
are things that we just need to get.
So, getting the ARPA money administered, that's a goal within this term as well. We're starting to get some of that out, and we still have some loose cracks there. We got monies available left over for housing, we need to figure that out. We want to open that up for a second round and see what can come back for us there. We still have an amount left over from the human services, we haven't figured out how we're going to fund it yet. So there's that still outstanding thing we need to figure out as well. And everything aside from that, we want to move forward with the ARPA funds. We're hoping to get those all administered within this term, correct, Jim?
That's been the goal, to get it out as soon as we can, so we are moving, the needle is moving, for sure.
I'm on the elderly tax abatement. That's another good one. Just constantly, I don't know if you want every year or every 2 years, at least make sure we're looking at it in comparison to inflation and seeing what the fixed incomes are. That way, we're not excluding anyone who gets an increase by inflation, and then they're over the amount, and they're not eligible. I mean, I like this plans to repurpose vacated school buildings. Just constantly thinking about that. We know certain schools are coming offline. We're doing a study on South Road. We know Curtis Corner's coming offline. We know Wakefield's coming offline. We at least need to do a sort of a study to figure out what we can and what we want to do with those buildings. And anyone, just feel free to jump in. I'm just sort of listing things.
No, you're good. So if you try to blend, let's just try not to drop the three ideas, the three council ideas that are there, between Patty's, myself, and Mike's. We can look at where the one addition I see from Patty is sustainability and transportation. So we are going to do we know that Rich Bourbonnais is getting a grant to do the comprehensive transportation study. That's not the right words, but remember that a couple of meetings
Yeah,
back.
yep.
So we know that we can look at that and we can incorporate some of Patty's ideas about moving the,
Yes,
she's,
yeah.
you
Let's
see
make
what I'm
sure-
saying?
Yeah, the comprehensive transportation study. Let's mark that down so we can sort of monitor how that's going, where that is, and hopefully get results within this term.
So not that I care, but since mine has the shortest, so it's those 12, plus some sustainability initiatives related to the comprehensive transportation, so that would be 13. And then Mike's include,
2 and 3 are already covered,
2 and 3, right?
or the impacts of climate change and dealing with sea level rise.
So
The
that's,
most specific aspect of it was identifying available resources, because there's money that's going to become available under the Inflation Reduction Act. And I've already talked to Senator Reed's office about it.
so possibly 13 and 14 would be something related to sustainability and climate change preparedness, proactive preparedness, something like that. So that would be 14. I wish we had a little screen.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, the list you have is great, but I think it should be sort of expanded on to include a lot of the thoughts we've added in relation to each other.
Oh, yeah, they're not going to be we can come up with a sentence. Those are just like, I typed that in 10 minutes. So, yes, it would be much like a line, develop a rental registration program or whatever, implement this.
Maybe a paragraph. I mean, we say affordable housing policies, that's pretty
Then
broad.
then you're going back to a 25-page document, and that's not what we want,
25 bucks.
a 25-page document.
Well,
True,
yeah,
true.
We want to keep it streamlined and easily digestible.
because we want anybody without a deep level of understanding to understand what we're working on, so then they could say, what does that mean? What affordable housing policies are you working on? And we could say, oh, it's the accessory dwelling unit. Oh, it's the cottage zoning. Oh, it's this. We've moved this.
Policies and projects, maybe also highlight some of the ongoing things that are happening right now with Johnny Cake and those, I think, 4 or 8 units. Just maybe add that word. But I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I wanted to ask Jim about the RIPTA transportation meeting that you went to. Do you think that that can somehow be incorporated with just an overall plan to improve? Because, I've talked to you before about the bus routes, especially the one on 138 that's just down from Route 1, where I saw a woman with kids in really bad weather, and I was afraid somebody was going to get hit.
So that RIPTA transportation hub, well, it's going to be called a bus hub for now, and hopefully it morphs into something more than that. But of course, that could be a goal and an objective of the town council, because we're gonna have to work with URI, and it keeps the pressure. We're gonna do it anyway, but I mean, it is a goal and objective to get that. Yet, we estimate about 2 years before they can really get all the permitting and money and shovel in the ground, and then 9 months to a year to build it. CCRI has one up and running now. So, yeah, that's a good goal and objective.
I think we got some good ones here. I mean, I think just another simple one is, in the short term, have that joint meeting with the planning board to discuss housing, a broad discussion on housing, notably affordable housing.
Right, so,
I mean, that should, I don't know if we want to include that or not, but that should be targeted for the real short term.
I agree. I'd like to meet with the planning board at least twice a year, if not quarterly, because I feel like that's where we don't have enough communication. It's very technical. We don't understand their challenges. We haven't met with them, this council hasn't met with them at all, and we're already 6 months in. So minimum twice a year. I would like to propose that we develop a calendar for all the boards and commissions to come in on a regular, like 10 minutes into 10 or 15 minutes of the work session. We see how much good work, for example, the Historic District Commission does, and when they come in, they have so much to tell us, but if they had a predictable routine to come in,
Rotating basis,
yes,
each meeting.
yes, so that all of them are updating all of us, as well as describing their work to the community. And I think, so, I don't know if we could do that,
Throw that on there. So sort of a,
create a comprehensive calendar where the boards and commissions come to a work session with the council, with the,
rotating basis, each meeting, different committee or board comes to the council, 10 to 15-minute update, what are you working on?
what do you need?
What do you need from us? Anything of that nature.
And then just the planning board come more frequently. Whether it's, if there's, say, 14 meetings, the planning board comes up, more often. I don't know. I'd leave it to
We'll
you.
see how that works out. How many boards and commissions are there?
I don't know.
Well, you can work that out.
Jeopardy question. Colleen?
All right.
So 15.
Council President, you brought up a term that I liked, that maybe we could incorporate in one of these formats. We use the short-term and long-term goals. So I had to do these all the time working for the state, because they were always accredited. So we always had short-term goals, long-term goals. And the short-term perfect example would be a completion of the municipal court, rental registrations, and some of the stuff. But the long-term goals, in the short term, most of what you have is going to be short-term because you're here for 2 years. But I'm sure that the council will be talking about this for a long time, is affordable housing, workforce housing, stuff like that. So you could have a short-term, and this is stuff we could present at a future. Once you get all these ideas, you can go down the list again with the 5-year and determine what's going to be short-term, what's going to be long-term, and this way we can differentiate.
That sort of, to me, is like what the difference is between the 25-page document and supplemental streamlined.
Sort of like, what's in the document is very long-term. What we're doing here is what to get done in the 2 years round.
I would like to, somebody suggested to me that rather than affordable housing or workforce housing, that we consider using the expression next generation housing. I just wanted to bring that up. That seemed to be more palatable to a very informal survey of 20 to 50-somethings. But it's open for discussion. What do you think, Rory?
I like the idea. I just, at this point, I think it's so ingrained into people's minds, maybe more so mine, that when we think of affordable housing, we're not just talking about low-income housing, we're talking about broad variety of housing that sort of people starting their career can't find. And if we start using a different name right now, I just don't want to confuse people, especially, think about affordable housing, you got the bills package at the State House. We're always talking about it. And then if we just say next generation housing, it's like, what are they talking about?
Okay.
But we could think about that more.
I like that. I like it. I think it's definitely more positive and affirming. I'm just was trying to figure out if it's what people, is that the next version of the word? Or are we, you know, is that where the curve is headed? That was, I guess, my question. I don't know. Did you come up with it? Because you should trademark it.
I didn't come up with it, but my husband actually is the one that is convinced that this is what it needs to be called, so. And other people agree with him, so. And I'm just thinking about marketing, because you know what it is, or you know what you think it is, but I think that maybe not everybody has that impression, but I don't think we're gonna like totally change the whole lexicon of the,
If we refer to it both ways, like affordable housing or next generation housing, actually donate it. That's kinda cool.
they said it was better than next gen. Next gen's like, yuck. They didn't like, nobody liked that. Next generation.
Well, that's a website.
Because you could do like, you know, like the little, nice little houses. You know, almost like back in the day when there was Sears kit housing. And those were really affordable, and I know we're not gonna be able to do that, but.
No, but we can put that in, next generation housing, as part of our, affordable housing goals. Just referring it to it as both.
Sort of looking forward to the next 300 years, you know?
All right, another big one, this is a long-term one, but just continue to take advantage of all grant opportunities out there. Jim's been pretty good at, using grant writing to try to max out every dollar we can get to avoid having to spend in-house, so I think that's got to maintain a priority. Anything we didn't think over?
To the point of Mike's streamlined meetings, I think that it's not really fair to the public to have meetings that go on until midnight regularly, because people have to work, and it's not really fair to anybody, but it has been brought to my attention that it's too late when we go to midnight. So I want to agree. I mean, not that anybody's
Work more efficiently? maybe?
work more
Big goal of
efficiently,
ours.
right?
So can I just mention, you also have rules of conduct that you operate under. Would something like that fall under your rules of conduct
Yes, I think that.
and not in
is
your
something-
goals?
There is something in our rules of conduct that states, in order to continue the meeting past 11 o'clock, there has to be a motion, has to be a vote to do so. So that's already in there. It's just, we've always voted in favor of continuing it.
So regardless of whether we change any aspect of the meeting, I think what's frustrating is you never know when public comment is going to happen. And so sometimes it happens in the first 20 minutes of the meeting because we go through the licenses and there's not a lot of communication, and then poof. And then sometimes we're stuck in the weeds of the communication items. We haven't even gotten to anything. So I think if the public could predict, I don't have to wait till 9:30 to speak. I know we could just say, no matter what, at 8:15, we will pause the agenda, allow public comment, and go back. Because I feel like some people waited hours, and if the meeting didn't get to it, they just eventually went home. And so, I mean, if you know you want to come here and speak, you would at least want to know, I might be able to speak by 8:15, as opposed to, I'm going to wait it out till 10 o'clock. We had a lot of people waiting. I'm thinking of like when we're discussing the zoning regs around cannabis, when we're talking about, there was one meeting where people left, because we were doing, maybe it was the last session, DLI conversations, and they were like, we couldn't even get in to talk. So, was that you? No. So just hopefully we could think about a way so that the public could predict when they could contribute, because that might be helpful. Even the last meeting, people were like, when do you think we're going to go? And I'm like, oh, it'll be quick. And then it was 9:30 when we started community comment. That's just another thought about how we could agree to pause.
I think we do have a segment in tonight's meeting sort of reserved for the agenda, considering alternatives, different options, maybe even a test trial run with something different. I don't know if we should want to use a lot of this time toward that.
I hear you. So this document, this larger document, we have no idea if any of those objectives were actually completed. We don't.
I think that's probably a good place to start, is to find out which of these things have been completed and start there, right?
Right. So I do think that some of them fall under the departments and not under the council.
Yeah, so I think we certainly need to scrutinize this a little more.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that in our work session here. But we
think-
can cross out things that or keep things that we think are still applicable, that we want in place, get rid of things that just aren't applicable anymore, get rid of what we don't like, get rid of things that, shouldn't really be within the council's purview. It should be sort of within the department.
Mhm.
So we can do that. That'll just sort of keep this open. This is a good sort of initial discussion. Anything huge sticking out that we missed?
I think we have to continue to build the partnerships. We have to set some objectives in terms of, we'd like to meet with the state legislature representatives and senators. We'd like to meet with URI. We'd like to offer to meet to the Narragansett tribe again. We should agree that we want those meetings, so that then the town staff can then put those meetings together. I'm not saying they have to happen fast, but we should have a plan, and they should just go, yep, we're doing that, because now it's the time for URI to come. Now it's the time for you see what I'm saying?
Annual meeting with our state reps and state senators, hopefully at a point in time where we're sort of prepared to give them certain things that we need, their authorization on to push forward or whatever. But also obviously have them come prepared what they're doing for SK, what they can
Well-
do for us.
Here's a perfect example. There's a number of housing bills that we're going to talk about tonight. Have any of us spoken to representatives and senators about those bills? One of our reps signed on to several of those bills, so you would hope that they'd be able to explain why they signed on and what the impacts would be to the community. If they're not signing on, why are they not what are those? We don't know what they're going to support, and we don't know if they're going to support what we want them to support. So that's a perfect example of, we need to get that meeting, because we're going to have an update, and we have no idea how they feel. So like, we probably needed to have, I was trying to have that
I think
January.
also, it's hard to target what bills are going to come out if you meet before session.
Right,
I don't think everyone has an entirely complete idea what bills are coming during the 6-month session.
right. But now we see all of those, so now we,
Too late to have them come in within a week and say what's going to happen.
right. These, a lot of those bills are held for further study, which means they're coming out again in June in some form, and we should have an understanding and give input, because those changes specifically can impact our community, our planning board. So meeting with the senator and reps, 2 senators and reps,
Annual meeting is more than that. It's more than 2 and 2. Annual meeting with all reps and all senators who represent at least a portion of South Kingstown. annual meeting there. Annual meeting with you or I, president and its executives, sort of like the town gown, which we haven't done yet this
We
year.
haven't done that. We didn't do it. We need to try to reach out to the Narragansett tribe, because we did make, that feels like a lifetime ago. Town Farm Park feels like a lifetime ago. But we have made some positive connections, and we should reach back out and have an annual meeting at least.
I can do that. Annual meeting with the Narragansett Tribe.
I mean, Jim meets with the hospital. I mean, they can certainly meet with us. I mean, we've met with them a lot. We can put one on the books, but it could be one of the farther out ones. You know what I'm saying?
Actually, that brings me to a new goal and objective that we haven't talked about,
Yep.
which is hopefully seeing through the land acquisition by the hospital of the old police building there,
We-
now the Public Works building.
Mhm.
So that's a goal within this term. So mark that down. Go ahead, Jim.
Yes, I agree. It's a goal within this term for sure.
I mean, if anyone disagrees with anything, it's been really quiet, so we're good.
It's great.
I mean, I don't
I
know how
mean,
to,
another one within affordable housing, sort of keep the housing authority accountable as it relates to the structures that they maintain.
Yes.
Maybe even have an annual meeting with them, because they're sort of a quasi-government. Are we keeping them on the list of boards and commissions? Let's keep them on as one of the ones that,
We have
I'm sorry, who's that?
yeah.
the housing authority.
Okay, so add, meet
Well,
with the housing.
they would be on the list of the boards and committees that would present to the council on a rotating basis. Let's just make sure that includes them.
Sure.
20.
At least 20? So people are most likely going to get one meeting a year, and maybe the planning board would have two, or we just have a special time that's not 15 minutes for the planning board.
Yeah.
And maybe perhaps the EDC needs more than 10 minutes as well. Do these meet? Does the Transportation and Traffic Review meet? No.
EDC's been seeking
Mm-hmm.
Short-term goal, set a time for a meeting, work session to be had with the Economic Development Committee. An hour before a meeting should work, regular session.
Hold on. One sec.
You don't want to do that?
No, I do want to do that,
It's a short-term goal.
but I don't want to do that. I want to put everybody in the rotation. Everybody gets a chance.
Yeah.
But they don't need an hour before we meet with the planning board for an hour.
Well, we wouldn't do the same night, different nights. Planning board would be a special meeting for that. EDC would just be an hour before a meeting.
So do you want to prioritize which committees you want first?
Yes,
Yes. Can we start with the EDC?
I would prefer the planning board. There is,
Planning board will be a separate meeting jointly for a few hours, not a 15-minute segment.
or you just said a 15-minute meeting for the EDC, but then it's an hour ahead of the meeting. So I'm just confused. That's why I'm confused.
So, sorry, let me clarify. The Economic Development Committee is seeking a work session with the council. I'm throwing out ideas that come to my head as short-term, tangible goals, one of which includes, let's allow them to meet with the council in a work session. When I say and think like that, I'm not thinking the 15 minutes, I'm thinking a full work session. Because I know they're seeking this,
So the planning
in
board,
addition to the rotating basis. So what I'm saying now
Okay.
is, give the EDC an hour in a work session, we meet with the planning board in a full meeting, longer than the hour work session, designated night toward that. In addition to all that, rotating basis. Each commission has a 15-minute segment, rotating basis, come to us at a council meeting. Make sense?
So would the EDC be your next meeting? come at
Sure,
like,
let's make sure we reach out to them, they can do that. So we want 1 hour work session, 6 PM to 7, prior to council.
okay.
But we need to reach out to them, make sure they want that. If they don't want it, we're not gonna force them to come.
We gotta push it. We can't, we need to prioritize them, but they don't need to be, we'll get some lead time. Because perhaps if you offer both the EDC and the planning board, people would say, I can't make that time. We have more be flexible about who can come on a Monday, because that's not their regular time.
Let's reach out to them and say, we're interested in inviting them to a work session before a regular scheduled council meeting, preferably 6 to 7 PM, and ask them what they can do, and if they're interested in it. Let's do that.
Well, I don't want to mix, sections that we're going to talk about, but one of the things I was going to recommend regarding the agenda reorganization was from 7 to 7:30, that's a true work session for everyone involved. And then we get a whole list of planning, EDC, BPAC, everyone gets that half hour. So we would, every other Monday, we'd have a different committee or group or whatever that would come and meet with the council. So that was part of the long-term strategy. But we'll talk more about that later, but.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, this meeting review is really not necessarily germane to the, we try to talk less. I try to ask less questions in the work session so that so when most people are listening, they're hearing the questions and the answers.
One thing's for certain, I think everyone's time is so precious, right? You spend a lot of time at these meetings that we get the most out of it, prioritized. So we'll talk more about that when my manager's report comes up. But that would be one of the recommendations, get a whole 6 months out, who's going to come next and talk to you.
So I'd just like to say about this meeting schedule, I'd like to just leave it to the staff to just sort of manage. I think they have a broad understanding of what we want.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out, like prioritize other whatever commissions that,
Yeah.
I just feel like it's also a way to validate the great work of the volunteers who serve the community and are so motivated with their service, and we never even see them.
Well, yeah, we should be hearing from them more. We should be sort of in the know as to what they're dealing with directly, and then try to help them where we can. So that way we're all sort of on the same page, in the know. It can help them achieve what they're working on. So I think it's great.
Right.
Any other thoughts? We got like 10 minutes remaining.
So in summary, for this big document, the town staff is going to go back and look at the objectives to see if this is a huge project. It's huge. You see what I'm saying? All these things, were they done? We would have no idea if they were done.
So if they're not done, you want to keep them as your objectives? Because this is your document.
Yes.
Well, I think it would be good
This
to
term's
know,
document.
like going forward, what is attainable?
Can we give them to the departments and ask them to go through them and?
See, that's what I mean, there are a variety of things. They're all wonderful. Inventory of the public shoreline access points, inspected and assessed, and recommendations. Like, they're great.
But we would like to know if it's happened.
Right, but they also don't belong in a town council objectives. They belong in departmental work plans and objectives. That's how I see it.
So if we mix both of them together, I think it'll even get lengthier. I think you're the council, your goals and objectives, long and short term. I'm just making a recommendation. I've done this type before, and then at the end of your term, we do the attainable part. Did we attain what you set out to do? And then you close that, and you open it up for the next council to start their goals and objectives. But that's a suggestion, to go back and see if anything was attained in this 25-page document and go over every one. We could do it, I guess, but I think if we had your new goals and objectives and trying to attain all those, that'd be the best way moving forward.
Just to be fair, I threw out 25, it's 9 or 10 pages, so.
Yeah, I really don't think it's too overburdensome. I mean, we could look at these ourselves. I mean, I can just see one here, reconstruction of the Marina Park boat ramp done by December 31, 2021. I mean, we could just revise that date. I mean, that's a goal for us, but the date is just moved.
And
Where are you, Rory?
Well, they're all there. There's lots with dates, that's Marina Park, boat ramp.
I mean, another just broad goal, all SK schools should be rated as 5-star. I mean, that's a great goal. We should leave that.
The goals, yes. I think the objectives is what I've been saying.
Yeah, it gets too wordy and.
And it's also things we physically cannot change, we cannot influence. They're Jim's people, Jim's the personnel lead. We can only work with Jim. He's working on all of these things. And if all of a sudden he says, we're not doing that because the boat ramp doesn't work, we have an objective that doesn't make any sense.
So then, like your mission statement that's here in draft form, is that something that you want to see stay? Do you want us to change that somehow?
I think the mission statement is fine.
I think it should stay.
And so should each of these goals in 1 through 14 stay? So like tax at number 1, right? Are the goals your goals? And we're adding in the other things like short-term rentals, things like that.
So, this document here, this is what's included within the town's budget that we plan to adopt the second Monday, 2 weeks from today. Is that right?
Not this document itself, but the sections of it. So like in the budget, some of these acronyms, these 1 through 14 acronyms, they're interspersed in the budget document itself.
Yeah.
We're looking
we
at about a
can-
month out before it's actually adopted. It's going to take that long to,
What did he say?
because we're going to have to come back again with the rough draft in front of you.
I think I didn't hear the first 5 words you said.
Well, the council president asked if this is something we'd be adopting in 2 weeks. I think it's going to take more time than that. I think it's going to take about a month. Like, we'll come back with a draft, and you can refine it, and then maybe the meeting after, I want to make sure it's right. But once again, I don't want to muddy the waters. Your goals and objectives are our goals and objectives. So you tell us what you want, and we will do our best to get it done, and then at the end of it, we'll talk about, was it attained? But if you want to keep some of these on there, pick out the ones you want to keep on.
Okay.
I just don't want to add to a document that's already outdated.
I understand.
I think we need to go through and figure out which ones were which were achieved, because certainly, some of them were. The library will resume normal hours of operation at all 3 locations, a minimum of 12 informational, cultural, or educational programs. I mean, I just think that I like seeing all these things here, and I would like to know where we're at, and I think it's important to have it spelled out and not just a general statement. I like the specificity of it. And I know just from having, I think Terry Murphy could answer a lot of these questions, and I know that we've actually received information about a lot of the stuff. For instance, the recycling receptacles, comprehensive master plan for Old Mountain Field. So
But in the 6 minutes we've got left,
we're not going to do
tonight.
it. No.
So maybe we could have the manager and the staff go through what's here and just report back to us what you have.
And if they haven't been completed, just provide us with a better estimates. Like, for example, it says whatever, the town will update its affordable housing plan. We definitely didn't do that. So is that a realistic goal for November 2024? Or are we just not going to have a date on things, or like,
I would love to have, like, for instance, a goal of doing a cottage, like an accessory dwelling workshop by a certain date, like, so that we kind of put that out there for people as one option, like make really specific goals under the, the heading of housing.
only thing I'm going to say is, there's 4 staff in the planning department, and we have a million great ideas and a million ways that we can solve the problem, but just 4 people. And we ask a lot of Jamie and his team, a lot. And so I don't disagree with you, but I'm also very realistic to be like, I want that too, but I don't know how, short of the guy moving in here and them all living here and working 24/7, some things just won't, something has to give, and I'm just worried that we already asked a
Well,
lot.
Deb, he's here right now. Should I just ask him?
No. He's resting.
Jim, is it too burdensome of a
Midnight for
task
you.
to have you, is it too burdensome of a task to have you and your staff comb through this 10-page document, just sort of verify what's applicable, what's not applicable, what the status is on certain time deadlines we put
Yeah,
forth?
Yes.
Things like that.
We can do that, and then we can weed out a lot of that stuff.
Yes, yeah.
What I'm really looking to is not creating like a paper tiger, like something we did just for the sake of having it sit somewhere. So you all are coming up with some real big goals and objectives that we've already started working on. Those are the ones that we really concentrate on. The real minutia ones, with all due respect, is like the trash receptacles and stuff like that. Like, that's a given. Those are just objectives we have to get through. They should not be a goal of the council, really, unless recycling is your goal and objective. And then how do we achieve that? Because what will happen is, what I've seen is, no one likes to take stuff out of these, and they keep growing and growing and growing. And I've seen them, when we went for accreditation in public safety, they were this thick, and no one really wanted to take anything out. So I think what we'll do is, we'll go through this and see what is the low-hanging fruit that we can take out, and just explain to you what was taken out. Then we'll go back with your major goals and objectives and formulate them into short-term and long-term, and hit the ground running.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
I like that.
So Patty, perhaps, it's exactly what I think. This is something that's morphed into something that it's bigger than it should be. But to help you feel better, perhaps we could think about being intentional and having each department head sort of give an update, like, here's what we're doing. Here, we put the trash, the recycling receptacles are all out. We're doing this, so that you hear it from the staff directly, not just during budget season, but like at another time, so that everyone is aware. Because if you don't read the document or know that the document exists, at least you have a little presentation show for the community. So that might be a way to let you know what you want to know, but not have it be like 12 library programs, 7 this. What if,
Right, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I like measurable and objectives, but I think what Jim is suggesting will allow us to get there.
And could I just mention that we do an annual report. The manager provides an annual report each year that has a lot, I think, of those statistics that you're talking about. And that's included in that.
Yeah, just to reiterate, the high-level, big topics, recycling, if that's your goal and objective, then that's on there, and you list what your goal, increase recycling by 10% within the fiscal year, whatever. And then we report back at some point what we've done. Better recycling bins, more scrutiny on the trash collectors and ensure we have a part-timer that checks. So that's what we're looking for, the high-level, big stuff that we have a succinct list that we don't get lost in it.
Right.
It is after 7, but go ahead.
It's okay. And then, but for Patty, I'm trying to make sure you feel like everything you got was in. So that we could say affordable housing policies are communicated through community workshops. And then that's something that happened, who knows what Jamie will do? Maybe he'll do something. Maybe he'll do it on Zoom. Who knows? Do you know what I'm saying? So that's what Jim's saying, just broad level, and then let them figure out the best way to deliver that objective.
Right, okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, it's going to bring us to a little after 7. It's good discussions we had on the goals and objectives for the council this term. But we do have a few interviews before we go into the agenda work session here. First, we have Robert Cagnetta, looking to be reappointed to the Zoning Board of Review. Welcome, Robert.
Good evening, how are you?
Good. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your service, and
Oh,
thanks for your
thank you.
continued interest. If you
Yeah,
just want to sort of tell us how your tenure's been, what's going on, and what you foresee as you keep going here.
Sure. I'm not exactly sure how long. I think it might be 16, 17 years, something. I think it's longer than my daughter has been around. So it's been a great experience. I really like participating on the zoning board because it's kind of, I do like the construct of it in the sense that we're there to not necessarily interpret or use our own opinions as to what we think can happen. It's more based on the ordinances and so forth. So it gives us, I think, a better ability to sort of look at each parcel kind of individually and sort of see its impact rather than having, I guess, an opinion on it. I mean, the way sort of the HDC would or something like that. So it sort of gives us a more objective look at it. So I do enjoy sort of interacting with the community in that level. So
Awesome.
I don't know if that makes sense.
All right. Thank you. You're off easy. Of
course.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
For the record, Mr. Cagnetta was appointed as an alternate in July of 2006.
All right, next we have Susan Walsh, looking to be reappointed to the Zoning Board of Review.
Hi there.
Susan, welcome, and thank you for your service as well. And sort of a similar line of questioning here, if you want to tell us about your experience, how it's going, sort of where you see things going, and the floor is yours.
It's been a great experience for me. My background right after college was in local government down in South Carolina. And I think local government is where the tire meets the road, the rubber meets the road. And so what you're doing, I think, is critical for the citizens. And I think what Chairman Cagnetta is doing on the zoning board is great. It's been a wonderful experience for me because it works, the planning board, the zoning board, the people work together. And Bob has a great sense of humor. He listens to everyone and respects everyone, which sometimes you wonder, but everyone who comes in front of the zoning board is heard, and we can ask anything we want that brings light to their petition.
Do you mind just speaking into the mic? Thank you.
There.
Thanks.
Do you want me to repeat what I said? No. But anyways, it's just been a great experience for me. I feel like I now know the streets of South Kingstown better than Jamestown, where I grew up. So I really have enjoyed it.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Susan?
No, just thank you for sharing that, because I felt like I kind of knew what the vibe of your board feels like, and I appreciate that, and appreciate your hard work.
I've worked on a lot of commissions and one other board here, and this is just a great working atmosphere. And I hope you all have the same.
Thank you.
I know the planning, I sat in on the planning board last month, and it was equally well-run.
Thank you.
All right.
I just wanted to note that, that I noticed that you went to Auburn, which is pretty cool for, did you go to Auburn?
I worked at Auburn University in Montgomery.
Oh, right, so
Yeah, I did
War Eagle?
economic development.
Oh,
with like
okay, I'm just,
a little think tank.
that's cool. I was just more referring to the football, the Auburn versus Alabama rivalry. I lived in the Deep South for a long time.
Yes, we like Alabama.
Oh, okay. Is that War Eagle or no,
Let's
Roll Tide, right?
Roll
Tide, okay.
And Bama. But I do want to say, on the zoning board, we have a great interest in basketball. Because one of our colleagues, his daughter, has a scholarship to Georgetown
Oh, wow.
for track. And I went to Georgetown. I did not run track. But anyway, so we were following the college basketball with great interest. And I've got to congratulate our colleague because he was supporting UConn, and he was right.
Yeah, they had a very exciting season.
It was,
Yeah,
yes. But not happy one for me.
no.
All right. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for your interest, and you should find out shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to dive into the agenda here, begin the work session. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Town Manager Jim Manny.
Thank you, Council President. So we have the agenda in front. We'll go to the, after the face page, the first page, we'll go right to consent agenda, which, just to give you a little preview, that one of the proposals is we put everything that is consent agenda under that title so you can look at that quicker than going through the entire document. But anyway, we'll go to licenses next. First one is a request for a temporary mass gathering permit for the 300th Anniversary Committee and DMP painting on the Earth Day post cleanup event mural unveiling on April 22nd at 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Expect about 100 people. Out of an abundance of caution, it was asked to put this. It's really unknown the exact number, but it should be a very positive event and a moderate-sized crowd. 6B, request to grant a victualling license to a Willie's Place, which was in Kingstown, 1283 Kingstown Road, Wakefield. It used to be right down the road over here on High Street. When I didn't see the sign back, I felt a little sad, but then my wife reminded me that they moved to a bigger spot and they're expanding, so that's a good thing. So he's requesting a victualling license at this new location, which is the old Kingston Pizza right around the corner, right?
You're going to ask your,
Sound like a typical Rhode Islander where it used to be.
I can ask that. No? No? You're telling me no?
It's an email.
What?
That's an email.
Good?
We're good.
All right, under communications, 7A. Mr. Doral Beasley sent an email March 13th regarding how school committee vacancies are filled. Currently, they're filled by an appointment by the town council, and in his communications, he's going to bring up that it would go to the next, if a person left, the next highest vote getter. So that's in his 7A. 7B, an email on March 18th from Mr. Robert Grandchamp requesting a resolution support of the rededication of Civil War Memorial to 7th Rhode Island Volunteers at the Vicksburg National Military Park. Our clerk, who's a Civil War buff, I found out, did a lot of research on this. This guy was the real deal. He knew what he was talking about. It was pretty interesting reading all the background documentation. I think the most appropriate place would be to refer this to the 300th Anniversary Committee, the Veterans Group, just to confirm everything that she looked up and move on from there. C is a resolution requested by the Burrillville Town Council in opposition of gun control legislation. D, Mr. Edwin Wilder requested amendments to the town ordinances relative to parking on Pine Street, right where the church is, across from the old Kenyon department store there. So I had the Chief Moynihan, who's here tonight, he looked at it. There were 4 spots right on Pine Street. They do have a sign that says 1 hour parking. One of the questions we both asked is, has the summons ever been issued for violating that? The answer was we couldn't find one. So we think the 1 hour parking sign probably would come down, and there would be maybe 4 more spots that we could locate to provide parking for the people who worship at the church on the corner. So that's request referral to the police chief when the time comes. E is a email, once again, received on April 3rd from Mr. Doral Beasley, requesting a public hearing regarding affordable housing and the reuse of school properties. F, request for a resolution by the Charlestown Town Council in support of an act relating to state affairs and government, tourism and development. This is related to the hotel tax that is currently collected by the state and reallocated to the municipalities. And it really, the Southern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce is the one that pointed out to me shortly when I came here. They give me I have a backup document in here that it shows that it's really not based on the fair percentage of the money that is collected here. The vast majority of it goes to the bigger cities, especially Providence. So Charlestown's requesting a support of a resolution for a better allocation of the tax dollars that are collected by the state. G, the Woonsocket City Council requesting a resolution on House bills and Senate bills, which are acts relating to financial institutions, license activities, lenders and loan brokers, check cashing. I couldn't think of one, nor when I asked around could anyone think of a check cashing facility here in South Kingstown. But if you look at the check cashing places throughout the state, they usually the people that use those don't have bank accounts, so they're forced to cash checks there, and they pay a high fee to cash the check at these locations. I think Charlestown's looking for a more Woonsocket, more equitable way to lower that amount, so the people that need the money the most aren't paying the highest amount to cash their checks. H, received a letter dated March 28th from Reverend Rinaldo, who's the pastor of St. Romuald Chapel in Matunic. We have some supporting pictures that go along with this in the backup documentation. And the request is that right next to the church, there are people parking on the grass, which creates like a muddy area. And we looked at this probably about 7 or 8 months ago, and we found that that area is well, I'll let Rich Burbank explain that, our Director of Public Services, but what it came down to was it really wouldn't be fair to pave that. That's the request, because then you'd have to open it up for pavement to anyone that wants any of the shoulders done on their private property. So, but I'll let him explain that in detail when this communication comes up. On April 2nd, Ms. Jane Cronin sent a letter regarding the annual controlled burn at Riverside Cemetery, asking that it be abolished. So if you walk straight out the town hall, walk straight down that path to Riverside Cemetery, you'll see it burned. It's burned all the way up the bike path and across into the swampy area. As soon as you could almost see it from here. I've seen it. First thing I thought was, what happened? But did a little research. Union Fire District has been hired for over 20 years now by the owners to do controlled burns to keep the brush down, feeling that this would be a deterrent to any fire that could catch if there was a high amount of brush on that side near the cemetery. So I don't, once again, I don't see the downside of continuing them to do this, but it is a private person that's hiring the Unified District to do this up the bike path. And turns green very shortly after they do this controlled burn. We'll go to 8, the town manager's report. 8A, Director Luke Murray's here. He's the chair of the school building committee. He'll give a brief update on where we've been and where we're at in the next couple of weeks, which we do every meeting to keep that conversation going. 8B, the update on the draft revisions to the town council agenda. During our work session, we brought up some points that we talked about. This will get into more detail. I have a template here that was given. There should be one in front of you, the town council, and it reorganizes the existing agenda. And during my report, I'll go over line from 1st to the 13th on maybe how we could reorganize this. And the recommendation I would make would be, unless there's something really that jumps out at you that you don't want on this reorganization, then let's try it for a meeting, and then reorganize it and try it again. But the whole purpose is to get the town business done as quickly as possible, and to keep it up front as best we can, so that when we have the public comments, which could go for a while, especially with some of the topics we have coming up, that we are able to get the business of the town done. I used this example a couple of meetings ago. At 11:24 p.m. is when we started getting into new business. At 11:55 p.m., we finally got to the last agenda item, and, you know, one of the staff members sat for about 6 hours waiting to get, and what he had to talk about was about 2 minutes. So that's a blatant example. That doesn't happen often, but this way we can get all the business done, no mistakes are made, and we can put it right up front on the agenda. So I'll go over that in more detail in my section. Town solicitor's report will be after the town manager's report. And Mike, did you want to go over anything that you want to address?
No, and I'll mention this during the public session. You had asked about where we were at with this set of bills that Speaker Shikachi is trying to get passed, and my guess is he'll get some, if not most of it, passed. Just giving you an update on where it is. Most of it is in committee right now. We watch this daily. We do this for South Kingstown and the other towns we represent. So in the event that something begins popping in between town council meetings, you'll get a memo from me, and I'll let you know. But we'll keep you up to date on it.
Thank you. Public comments is next, appointments is next, then we go right to new business, 12. 12A is requesting support of a House Bill 2023 H5639, an act relating to education, federal aid, which would establish a statewide universal school breakfast and lunch program in Rhode Island.
Thank you for putting that on. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Thank you for putting that on.
12B, Sherman Sand and Gravel, authorizing the award of the bid for purchase sand for our town beach. 12D is LED street lighting award of contract to the Acuity Brands Technology Service. Once again, Director Bourbonnais here, and he can explain why we're at this point with this award of contract. These are new LED lights that were put in several years ago. G, this is a request for a resolution authorizing a 2-year extension to the original 5-year lease between the town and Mr. Bruce Thunberg of Twin Peaks Land and Cattle Company on Matunic Schoolhouse Road. This is that at the town beach, all the way to Cards Pond Road, right up against Roy Carpenter's beach, there's that big field. And most people don't know this, that grass is cut for hay by Mr. Thunberg, and he has a contract with the town, and the annual fee is about $2,500. Keeps the land looking nice, and it gets done timely. So that is a request to have that extended in another 2 years from the 5-year that it was granted. H, a resolution authorizing the town council president to submit letters of support for the town's applications for Rhode Island Commerce Corporation, specifically for site readiness facade improvements to the Matunic Market. The owner of the proposed market, this is where the Feet First building is Mr. Perry Razzo. He's here in the crowd. If you have any questions, I'm sure he'd be able to answer them. But basically, it comes down to this. This is separate from the facade improvement of the opera money that the town council approved. So it's not like this is one person getting this money. Mr. Razzo wrote a letter to the town about 3 weeks ago stating he was going for a grant directly to the Department of Commerce and asking the town for the support for this facade improvement. It's approximately $150,000 is the grant request. So the owner and his attorney went to the Department of Commerce, found out about this grant, came back, requested support by the town in a letter form so that he could put this in with his application. Director Jamie Rabbit's here, and he was the one handling that. So the question is, well, why the town get involved in this application process or support if he put in for it? It's because the state wants to make sure it's a viable project, credible project, attainable project. They just don't want to hand money out without the town looking at it, making sure it's something we would approve and whatever. So that is what the request is for. A feasibility assessment for the South Road School property. That's what the request is going to be. We did Luke Murray, Director Murray, gave a presentation on it. We've been looking at it now. Now, what are we going to do with that property? And I think a feasibility study would be very applicable to find out exactly what we can do, how big it should be, and maybe an approximate cost.
May I ask a question about that?
Yes.
I don't see, do you have an estimated cost of what that would be and where the money would come from to fund that?
No, that's the next step after you authorize us to
Okay.
undertake this study.
But so you want us to authorize a study, but you don't know how much it'll cost? Or
Well, we're going to come back to it with it. We're going one step at a time. So we presented what this property entailed.
Yep.
Now, requesting that we start looking at a feasibility study. We'll come back with the cost. We'll go step at a time. And then, I don't know what that cost is. When Luke comes up, we can
Okay.
maybe get a better idea, but I don't even know if we have.
And then where are you going to get, like, the magic money for that? Just, like,
Well, I got to see what it is first.
yeah.
So, magic money. I
There
don't
is
know.
no couch for you
No,
to shake. You've
no,
already
there
shaken that
isn't. There's no
couch.
slush fund. So, but it is a priority, right?
Yep.
That's
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
a big priority to the council. I could see it when we talked about it.
Yeah.
So we'll have to figure it out. So we'll go one step at a
Okay.
time. If you want us to do the feasibility study, we'll move forward with that, get you an idea what the price will be, and get you some solution where the money's coming from.
Okay.
J, Councilwoman Bergner requested that the Planning Department and Planning Board initiate a review of the zoning ordinance and draft amendments to align medical marijuana regulations with recreational cannabis regulations. That's it.
Want me to explain? Do you need me to explain?
Go for it.
So just based on all the public comment about where we were going to put recreational cannabis, I thought that we should go back and look at all the places where we have medical marijuana. People had very strong opinions about their neighborhoods, and I think we should make sure that we get a closer alignment so that there's not one Because that, what's gonna happen is gonna say, this one's much larger, why is this one so much smaller? So if we make them all more similar, no one's gonna be, I can say the prevention of future stress on neighbors if we make everything a little smaller. We'll make that more aligned with recreational.
All right, I'll have more questions when we get to it.
Sure.
Just. All right, any questions for the manager right now? All right, we got about 5 minutes till 7:30, so we'll take a 5-minute recess.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Testing.
You can tell me. I know. I've been trying to do better with it. Try to do better.
Thank you. Turn that mic up.
The only one that in the state that's asked.
What is this? You can't believe what?
All right, good evening, everyone. It is approximately 7:30 PM. Today is April 10th, Monday, and we're here for our regularly scheduled town council meeting. First order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. All right, next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land in which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe, whose land and water we benefit from today. Now, before we go on, I do just want to acknowledge the death of Chief Moynihan's father, and I want to send the support and condolences from the council to him and his family as he goes through this time. So I just wanted to mention that before we get going. Next, we have the roll call, if you would, Susan.
Council President McEntee?
Here.
Council Vice President Marin?
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner?
Here.
Councilwoman Alley?
Here.
Councilwoman Rose?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Next, we have item 4, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve for A, B, and C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 5, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 6, licenses. A is a resolution granting a temporary mass gathering permit to the 300th Anniversary Committee and DMP Painting to hold the Earth Day Post Cleanup Event and mural unveiling at Kingstown Road, Wakefield on April 22nd, 2023, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Application by Terry Murphy. I don't know if anyone's here in support of this, but I think we have a great idea what this is all about, so I'm willing to just pass it. So do I hear a motion on this?
Motion to approve 6A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item B here, a resolution granting a victualling license to William Johnson, doing business as Willie's Place of Kingstown Road, Wakefield, subject to communications, Union Fire, and Department of Health approval. Application by William Johnson. I don't believe William is in attendance tonight. Is that correct, Susan?
Has he met all the requirements that you need? Okay. So we have been able to approve a license even if the person's here and.
Yeah, I'm willing to pass that. He's simply moving his location to a bigger location, expanding operations, so this is an easy one.
Motion to approve item 6B.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No, all right, that passes. That's going to bring us to communications, item 7. A is an email dated March 13, 2023, from Doral Beasley concerning the process to fill school committee vacancies. Doral, come on up. Doral. All right, Doral, we received your email. We got you on the agenda, so now we'll allow you to talk about it.
Good evening, Doral Beasley. All right, over the last 2 council sessions, we've been privy to see a 2-act play in how to not select or fill a school committee vacancy. In 2015 and 2016, a conversation started in this town about changing the way that we filled vacant council seats. Up till that point, the remaining members of the town council chose the person to fill any seat that was vacant until the next election. That actually ended up on the ballot in 2018, and it was passed by 75 to 25%. Overwhelmingly approved by the town. It's time to do the same thing for filling school committee vacancies. As it's written right now in the charter, it says here, any vacancy in the membership shall be filled by the town council by an interim appointment until the next regular town election, at which time the vacancy shall be filled for the balance of the expired term. Now, school committee vacancies are a little bit different than town council because the town council is reelected every 2 years. And the school committee, when somebody gets elected to school committee, it's for a 4-year term. But the school committee also has elections every 2 years because those are rotated out, sort of like the Senate and the U.S. Senate. So every 2 years there'll be an election, at which time you'll be able to fill the vacancy with someone that's on a ballot. But in the interim, I believe that we should be filling those vacancies exactly the same as we do for the council now. So I took the council verbiage out of the charter. It would sound something like this. Any vacancy in the membership of the school committee at any time shall be filled by the candidate in the 6th place in the most recent election for school committee, provided that he or she meets all qualifications as therein set forth and consents to the filling such vacancy. Should this individual decline the office or no longer qualify to serve thereon, vacancy shall be filled by the candidate in the 7th place in the most recent election for school committee, provided that he or she meets all qualifications as herein set forth and consensus to filling such vacancy. Should both of these individuals decline to fill the vacancy or no longer qualify to serve thereon, or there were no candidates other than those elected to the office, the members of town council shall, by majority vote, fill the vacancy by interim of the person of their choosing who is qualified. So basically, you would do what you did over the last couple of weeks. Now, I have 7 in here, but you're often find for school committee, depending on the number of vacancies, you're not apt to have as many people running for the office. This last fall, if I remember correctly, there were only 4 people voted. Only 4 people ran for the 2 empty seats, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So in that case, since the 2 Democrats were elected, then the 2 Republicans would be the 2 people next in line to fill a vacancy. In my estimation, that's absolutely fair. As I've said before here, if someone takes the time, the effort, and the expense to run for public office, if they should have the option, if they so choose, to fill a vacancy until the next election. Now, in November, we're going to have a referendum here in town on the school building a new high school. I suggest that this get put on that same ballot, so you'll have 2 items for which people will have a chance to say yea or nay, because it would help, I think, in getting people interested in to actually go to the polls or vote online or vote in person, however they're going to do it. And why not get it done sooner rather than later, not wait another whole year and a half?
All right, thank you, Doral. All right,
So may I ask a question about that?
go for it.
So what would be the process for amending the charter to address his questions?
To amend the charter, it would require a majority vote of the town council to place the measure on the ballot.
Okay,
One thing I need to look into is whether or not charter amendments can take place during special elections versus a general election. I haven't been able to
yeah.
look at that yet. But the process would be the town council would have to decide whether they want that question on the ballot. I can find out then which ballot it has to be on, if we have to wait till 2024, or whether, if you decided you wanted to go forward with this, or if it could go on, as Mr. Beasley suggested, in November of 2023.
Thank you, Mike.
So I'm not opposed to this. I think that this is a decision that the people of the town should be able to make.
I agree. I think it takes a lot of, I think it places the responsibility back with the people who are voting and not with 5 people and whatever agendas people hold. So I think it's a more equitable solution. We've seen a number of vacancies on the school committee going back 6, 7 years. Sometimes I think maybe 4 years is a long time to serve on a school committee, and that could contribute to some of it as well. But I think the solution is a good one, and I would support a change.
So I'm not inclined to support this. I think that, we compare this to next highest vote getter in the town council race. That was special election versus go to the next highest vote getter. Here we're talking about council appointment or next highest vote getter. I think we've seen in our experience on the council that, within the 4-year term the school committee's members serve, a lot can happen. A lot can change during a term that wasn't contemplated when someone ran. We've seen that when we've had these solicited interest for these vacancies, we don't see the people who are next in line even applying for these positions. With that type of sort of length and time for a term, I don't see it as we should go to the next person in line who ran 3 years ago. I think as a council, we have great insight into what's happening at the school committee, changes that are positive, negative, and how we can sort of seek out people who are interested then and now, giving a broader pool of people to choose from, soliciting their interest, and then asking them questions, and then choosing from them who we believe is the best, as opposed to just going to the next person in line. I think this is a good mechanism. I think we've seen it done. We've seen turbulence on a school committee allowed us to vet out applicants from a large pool and place certain ones in there to make a strong committee. We've seen it. And I think it's a good mechanism. I think it's important we're involved. I think it allows us to sort of have our hand in play when we see things are not going so strong or not going so well. So in my opinion, the current mechanisms work, they're good, and they're effective, and we've seen it happen, we've done it. So that's where I am.
I would like to just correct some of Mr. Beasley's information. There were actually 5 candidates for school committee last year. The winners were 2 Democrats and an independent who came in the school committee race. The next highest vote getter was 4664, compared to the lowest of the top 3 were 7,000. So that's a pretty big, decisive remark from the voters, I think.
I think if people actually are concerned about how the voters feel, the simplest solution is to have a special election when there's a vacancy.
Okay.
So Doral Beasley, I just want to just compliment and recognize you for always coming with creative solutions. And I appreciate when residents come and try to address proactively issues. I don't always agree with everything that you say, but I do want to recognize that I always welcome you and welcome anyone who wants to come and disagree or present a different idea, because I think that's why we're all here is to listen.
Dorold, we've given you the opportunity to present this. Thank you.
Just a
Right.
quick
Go ahead, Mike.
update. I did just look it up, and charter amendments can occur at special elections, just so you have that in the back of your mind.
Thank you.
So if we wanted to move this forward, we would just have to put it on the next agenda and it would get voted down or up or down?
So you'd go the route of a public hearing, because the public would have input, because you wouldn't be setting up a charter commission for this, there'd be no need for that. Council, though, on its own, has the ability, after a public hearing. Yeah, so you'd have to vote as a council to do all of that.
So it's just, put on, we just write, ask for an order of notice to be placed on the next agenda regarding this?
To keep this on.
So if you were to do that, you'd have to get a majority of votes to affirmatively vote yes to get that.
That is correct. You could do that tonight if you wanted to.
So I'm inclined to take no action on this item. Place on file.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion,
Second.
a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passes 3-0 with 2 abstentions. All right.
We didn't abstain.
No one abstained.
3-0, no vote?
No,
Oh, 5-0?
it was 5.
There's-
Sorry, my apologies, that passes 5-0. Didn't hear those.
So even though it's voted down right now, this always can come back up, so likely it will.
All right. Moving on. 7B, an email dated March 18, 2023, from Robert Grandchamp requesting a resolution in support of the rededication of the Civil War Memorial to the 7th Rhode Island Volunteers at Vicksburg National Military Park. I don't believe, is Robert here today? No. All right, Jim, can you give us a little brief on this one?
I believe Mr. Grandchamp lives out of state in Virginia, is it? Vermont. Mr. Grandchamp originally stated he was from Rhode Island. He did some research into the Civil War Memorial of the 7th Rhode Island Volunteers of Vicksburg. The town clerk did a good amount of research on this. Everything was accurate, credible, and Mr. Grandchamp appeared to really know what he was talking about. So it appears to be a reasonable request. I guess this monument is in some type of disrepair as well. So if you, maybe we could refer this to the 300th anniversary, the Veterans Group, to really take a look at this, and then come back in a short amount of time to follow through with this resolution.
All right. Do I hear a motion referring this one to the 300th Anniversary Committee?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item C, a resolution adopted March 22, 2023 by the Burrillville Town Council in opposition to RI 2023 gun control legislation.
I would like to respond to this one and ask that the council adopt a resolution in support of H 5300, which is a ban on AR-15s and related assault weapons, and Bill H 5434, which is the Secure Storage Gun Act.
You got those bill numbers down, Susan?
It's H 5300 and H 5434. 5300 is the AR-15 ban, and 5434 is secure storage, requiring people to keep their guns in their, secured.
All right. So the motion, we have that motion essentially rejecting this item and then directing that we have resolutions in support of those bills. Perfect. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. That brings us to item D, an email dated April 2, 2023, from Edwin Wilder requesting amendments to the town's ordinances relative to parking on Pine Street. Edwin, are you in the crowd tonight? No, but Jim, you want to give us a little brief on this one?
Yes, Council President, an email was received on April 2nd from Mr. Edwin Wilder regarding our ordinance relative to the parking on Pine Street near the Ascension Church, which is right off Main Street. And I had the chief go out and look at it. There's 4 parking spots, but there is also a sign that gives 1 hour parking mandatory. It really isn't, has never really been enforced that we could track. So the chief went above and actually, he's here and he can speak, but he thinking of taking down or amending the ordinance, take down that 1 hour parking sign, and also giving 4 more spots to the Ascension Church so they may worship without worrying about their vehicles being ticketed, which they won't.
I think also this is great because it being so close to downtown, we're always worried about there not being enough parking downtown. That's close enough that when those spots are not being used by parishioners, people have more access to downtown Wakefield.
I agree.
I think it's a great idea.
Mike?
Not as close to the end of the line at Brickley's, though. That wraps around,
Line
right?
goes the other way.
All right. Do I hear a motion here, perhaps to refer to the police chief?
Motion to refer item 7D to the chief of police.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just a quick thank you to Jim and the chief for being so quick in responding to this.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item E, an email dated April 3, 2023, from Doral Beasley requesting a public hearing be scheduled concerning affordable housing and concerning reuse of school properties. Doral, come on up.
If you read the newspaper, Providence Journal, there have been a lot of articles in the journal over the last few months about affordable housing, the lack of affordable housing. The legislature just introduced a package, 14 bills for this year to address the housing crisis. So do we have a housing crisis in South Kingstown? Absolutely, yes, we do. The Rhode Island Housing Authority mandated that cities and towns in this state should have at a minimum 10% of their housing units in an affordable category. Now, what is affordable? Well, it depends on how wealthy you are or not wealthy. In the second congressional district, which we're in, the last district housing profile by Representative Langevin goes something like this. People at or below 30% of the AMI in this district, about 20,000 total households. Of those, 13,000 are severely burdened, which means they can barely come up with enough money to pay the rent. So that's 65% of the people in the lowest earning category that live in this district are severely burdened. Now, in the budget that you're going to be talking about later this month, there's a slide in there. It says Rhode Island, a fair market rent value for a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,264. In order to afford this level of rent and utilities without paying more than 30% of income on housing, a household must earn $4,215 a month, or $50,000 and change annually, assuming a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks a year. Now, in Rhode Island, our minimum wage is $12.25. The average renter wage for a Rhode Islander is $17.10. To afford that 2-bedroom apartment, you have to make $24.32 an hour, $25 an hour. There are 160,000 renter households in this state. And 38% of the people that live in this state are renters. Now, if you didn't make that $24.32, if you made minimum wage, you'd have to work 79 hours in a week to afford that apartment. This town's affordable housing percentage is just about a little over 5.5%. It's been stuck there for a decade. We talk about affordable housing here a lot. I know you've got, I think, $225,000 in this budget to look at affordable housing over the next 6 years. The biggest problem about living in this town, if you don't make a good wage, is find a place to live. Now, the cost of land in South Kingstown is just insane. I did a Google today of vacant buildable lots in South Kingstown. It came up with about 15, maybe 20. One of them is in Parkwood. Parkwood's about a quarter of a mile from where I live. Now, I know exactly where this lot is because my wife and I walk all the time up there. The water table on that lot is probably about 2.5 feet below the ground. It's surrounded on the back by a swamp, and they're asking $185,000 for it. Now, you've recently passed ordinances to add things to our housing mix, like in-law extra dwellings on a lot, and you just came up with something else. I can't remember the name. It started with a C. Cottage something or other. Now
Well, I do want to ask you politely if you could sort of be concise.
Oh, I'm concise.
You're a little well over the 5. I'm giving you rope here.
I didn't know that I was under the 5.
Well, this is my attempt here to just sort of be concise if you can. We did receive your communication. We know what it aims for, and just allows us to sort of get to the discussion aspect, to act
Okay.
on what you're looking for here.
So Dorold, if we could, just for 1 second, you asked for a public hearing to talk about the school properties. It is on our agenda to move forward with it. I certainly don't mind having you keep going, but I think if we're going to have a community conversation about how to use the properties, is that a better place for the detail pieces that you want to add in?
Okay, so let me get to the bottom line here. So the way the school building committee and you have, and the school committee have voted at the present time is to, after the new school is built, the new high school, you're going to demolish the building on Columbia Street and also the Curtis Corner Middle School to bring the athletic field and the football field and the track up higher and out of the swamp. And to do that, you're going to spend $5 million. It's my belief that that's $5 million wasted. The main reason is we need that facility on Columbia Street for affordable housing. It could be a place between 100 and 150 units probably of affordable housing. At the rate that we're adding affordable housing over the last decade in this town, it would take us into the 23rd and 22nd century before we would reach the 10%. And again, remember, 10% is the minimum. In my estimation, what we've done here over the last 50 years with land use practices is basically we don't care anymore about whether or not people of lesser means live here. In 1950, 10% of the students that went to South Kingston schools were black or indigenous, about 5% each. In the year 2000, that was down to 3% each. Now we're 20 years after that, it's down to 2% each. That's where you see where this is headed? I think that a community conversation needs to take place. Here we are in the 300th year of the existence of this town, and from where I'm looking, we don't care whether or not those people that have lived here for decades live here anymore, because we're not helping them in any way stay here. And if we spend $4 million to bulldoze Columbia Street, what does that say we are?
Thank you, Doyle. All right, so let's talk about this one. Now, obviously, we're undertaking, identifying our goals and objectives, which includes a focus on affordable housing as a long-term goal, policies around that, and some certain specifics within that. We're also talking about having a comprehensive joint meeting with the planning board to really dive deep into the area of affordable housing, what's worked so far, what's not working, what can be expanded, what can be added on the horizon here. So I think a place like that is where a lot of these discussions can be had. You know, this is already on our radar, so we just need to identify the time and place to have that meeting, which should be in the short term. But any thoughts on this?
Well, we do have a request in to have a conversation with the planning board about the broad topic of housing, Dorald. So I know that's not everything that you want, but I think it's a good starting place, because I think some of the policies and procedures that prevent us from making progress are there. I hear you saying that you would like us to have used the high school in a different way. We've already moved through a door that we're not going to go back from on that. So the high school is going to be built on Hazard Field. We're going to knock down the current high school and create 2 practice fields for lacrosse and football. And it's clear to me that the athletic changes need to happen, because that track is not usable and not necessarily fixable. We do have the South Road property that we are talking about tonight, and getting the highest and best use for that property might include the addition of affordable housing or new generation housing, as we might want to change the lexicon.
Yes, I like
So,
So
it's not exactly what you want, Darrell, but we are moving in a direction that I think is going to address the big picture, which you seem to be seeking. You don't look like you're liking that.
But yeah, we know it's an issue. It's a priority for us. We have identified short-term areas that we want to do to help with this. And that joint comprehensive meeting, be on the radar, Dorald. We hope you come. It's going to be a productive meeting in the near term.
Do you
The planning
think,
board.
do you think it's going to be, Jim, is that going to be in May, June, July?
We haven't come up with a date yet. We'll have to,
Okay.
now that we're directed to find one, we'll start looking at available dates.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other thoughts?
No, I think it's, something that we're all really keenly aware of, and something that I think we all agree is a big problem. So I'm hoping, I think that we have some good things that are happening. So,
The other piece, Dorald, and I'm sure you know that Wakefield School is supposed to close at the end of the year as well. The school department is going to turn that over back to the town, so there's another property. So there are properties that we can look to develop housing at that meets some of the needs that we know we have.
All right. Perhaps place this on file, refer to the manager's office for us to discuss at a later joint meeting with the planning board.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that motion passes. That's going to bring us to item F, a resolution adopted March 27, 2023 by the Charlestown Town Council in support of House Bill 2023 H5788, an act relating to state affairs and government, tourism, and development that would revise the distribution formulas for each geographic district in the state. All right, Jim, you want to brief us a little bit on this one?
Yes, Town Council President. This is a topic of discussion with the Southern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. They brought it to my attention about a year ago. So basically, the state has a hotel tax that is collected and distributed to the municipalities. And it's done by geographic area right now. The way it works is, it's mostly in favor of the larger communities, such as Providence, which gets the bulk of the tax distribution by the state. And this House bill would level it out more so that it's fairer to the communities, the smaller communities. And Charleston is the one, I just read the entire thing today, and really whatever money is collected in the town of Charleston would be distributed in the town of Charleston. It would be like that all through South County, which gets a much lesser amount than the bigger cities. So this, if this passes, this House Bill H 5788, there'd be a bigger distribution of funds from the state hotel tax to a community such as South Kingstown.
Excellent.
And I can tell you specifically, the way it breaks down is that 50% would go to the tourism district, and 25% would go to the individual cities in town. So the town of South Kingstown would get 25% of the proceeds from the hotel tax for hotels located in South Kingstown.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right, definitely a good one to support here. It would help us. So,
Motion to approve item 7F.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item G, a resolution adopted April 3, 2023 by the Woonsocket City Council in support of House Bill 2023 H5160 and Senate Bill 2023 S0175, acts relating to financial institutions, licensed activities, lenders, and loan brokers, check cashing regarding payday lending reform. So Jim, again, you want to just give us a little brief on this one?
Yes. H 5160 relates to specifically check cashing locations. Although I could not locate any in South Kingstown that we know about, no one could find one, but they're throughout the state, usually in the most needy communities. And basically, the people that go to these are the ones that don't have bank accounts, and they're paying exorbitant amounts in percentages and fees to cash a check. But what, reading this bill, there's one area that impressed me, that this bill would lower the fees for those who are most needy, which they should get the most from any check they get, especially this line right here on page 10, was the check cashing fees in excess of 3%. No licensee shall charge check cashing fees in excess of 3% in the face amount or $5, whichever is greater, if the check is in payment of any kind of state public assistance or federal Social Security benefit. So just that one line alone these aren't personal checks we're talking about. These are people that are coming in with public assistance checks, which need every dollar they get. So it would really lower the amounts to those and regulate what a check cashing facility could charge.
All right, thank you, Jim. Certainly something good for society. I don't think it necessarily affects SK because we don't have these type of businesses, but I think a good sentiment to get behind it and support it, support of those in need in this state.
Motion to approve item 7G.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item H, a letter dated March 28, 2023, from Reverend Albert D. Reneo, pastor of St. Romuald Chapel, requesting that the town consider paving the town's sidewalk in front of the chapel in Matunic Village. Rich Bourbonnais, come on up.
How are you?
Good, Rich.
Good. So they've been before us before, and at DPS. In fact, a year ago, we responded to a request very similar from a Mr. Kells, I believe, who was speaking on behalf of the church. The problem we have with what they're asking for is us to go in and pave it. Our first concern is that, well, I'm sure that everybody on Atlantic, Washington, Community, Holden would love to pave real wide, 40 feet across in order to park additional vehicles. I'm sure they would all love that. But the projected amount of impervious conditions in this situation is just not. It's not good, and it would have to be permitted. So what we've asked them to do is to, if they are really intent on doing this, have it engineered, get it permitted, do whatever it takes to mitigate for any increased impervious conditions, like anybody else would be asked to do, and then we'll, entertain them widening out across the frontage of the property. So that's what we've asked. And the other part of this is that, we don't like using, what would be public funds for the direct benefit of a specific property. And I would be all in favor of helping either St. Francis or the chapel, whichever, but to provide public funds for a direct improvement to a specific property is not necessarily it's something we try to avoid, generally speaking. So, that's where we're at, and we've asked them to do that. We asked them a year ago to do that.
All right, thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich? All right. Hear a motion here, perhaps to refer to the manager's office and his staff.
Motion to refer item 7H to the town staff.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item I, a letter dated April 2, 2023, from Jane Cronin concerning the annual controlled burn at Riverside Cemetery and asking that it be abolished. Jane, if you're in the audience, I ask you to come on up. All right, Jim, can you give us a brief on this one?
Yes. As stated, a letter was received April 2nd from Jane Cronin regarding the annual control burn at Riverside Cemetery. So where we're talking about is you leave the town hall, go straight across the street, go right to the cemetery. Right across, you'll see a controlled area that's burned in the swampy area near the tomb, where the old tomb right there. But then it goes all the way up the bike path in a very deliberate, specific spot. I contacted Chief Stephen Pinch of the Unified District today just to get a background of what that was all about. Unified District has been hired by a private family that owns all that property on that, and it is, they pay an amount, a fee to Unifier, and they burn these low areas going up to the cemetery. And Chief Pinch stated that there's other parts of town that this is done. It's a practice used by forestry people to keep the brush low, ticks down, and so forth. But it grows back very quickly. It's really not an issue, but Chief Pinch stated specifically that spot right over here, it backs up to these houses that's very close, so they burn that in a controlled way to keep the brush down, prevent a fire that could spread by a discarded cigarette or something else, which could spread up towards this way. So the basic answer is it's something that's good for our environment, not bad. So I would recommend we don't even address it.
Have you ever been down to see it? We go down to watch it every year. It's actually a very cool thing, and I think they use it sort of as a training exercise too, with the firefighters. We saw a fire today that was probably, I don't know what the cause of that was, but with high winds, there's a fire watch right now, so.
Yeah, there was a 1,000-yard mulch pile that caught fire. They think it's spontaneous combustion because the core of it gets so hot.
Oh, yeah.
But Unifier was right there, controlled it. It was in the middle of the woods off Gravel Hill, so.
Like you said, like somebody tosses a cigarette, catches in the brush, especially days like today, it goes up, so. It serves a lot of purposes.
All right.
I have a couple of questions, though. I guess in general, we don't own the cemetery, nor do we direct Union Fire, so I'm just curious how this got on the, how does this item get on the agenda when others might not?
So that's a good question. The threshold we use is, does it require the council to make a decision? In her letter, it specifically asked that it be abolished by the council once received. So, she asked, could this be abolished? So this would require action by the council if you chose to do so. But
It's fine, it's interesting because it has neither.
yeah, there's another big part of this. We didn't, I had to investigate this. I had no idea if that was like vandalism or whatever else it was, but.
So which leads me to the other piece of this is what communication is given to the community so that they know. Jess has lived here, lives near it, so she knows. I had no idea. It
was put out on social media leading up to it for a couple of days.
Okay.
That's how we always catch it, to know when to head down.
Who puts that out? Union?
UFD and the town shared it as well.
Okay. New to me. I lived here 20-something years, 26.
I'll go with you, Deb. We'll check it out.
The whole, people
Next year.
line the bike path to watch it. It really is like a fairly well-known and anticipated.
People put flyers up on the bike path.
No,
but
they
might
it's
burn,
pretty
so-
packed when we go down. People come down, they bring their kids in lawn chairs and watch.
We spent a year planning
Really
the
cool.
300th anniversary. We could have done that. It's fine. Just putting it out there, and if you don't live here, there's a fire once a year.
Perhaps a motion to place this on file?
Motion to place 7I on file.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 8, Town Manager's Report.
There are 2 items on the town manager's report. A will be the update on the school building committee. Director Luke Murray, I'll call him up. He can give a brief overview on where we've been the past couple of weeks and where we're going. And then I'll go over the update on the draft revisions on the town council agenda.
Good evening. Luke Murray, Director of Administrative Services and Chair of the School Building Committee. So the School Building Committee has been working diligently. At our last meeting on March 30th, we had a 1-hour work session really focused on getting a request for qualifications document together for an owner's project manager, which we're at the phase now where we could really use some additional assistance as a building committee to get somebody on board to help us assist with things like drafting another RFQ for an architect for the stage 3. Looking forward towards the estimate, making sure that that's validated, and just guiding us additionally through the process. In addition, the school building committee would like to create a more robust website, and that's part of it, is trying to get something a little bit more interactive, educational, as we lead up, because a big part of what we're trying to do is just get good information out to the community about the project. So that's ongoing. I have reached out to the schools. We've identified a funding source through the school's capital fund of approximately $23,000 that we could use for that. We're trying to work with the schools to determine who would do the procurement process on that. But that needs to happen soon. We have a goal of early May, late April, early May, to get an OPM on board. We have new surveys online for anybody watching, and I believe you all received an email that I put out asking you to share. There's a survey on the School Building Committee website. There's actually 2. One is on the architectural features, common features on high schools. There's 54 images in that survey. We're looking for general context. Do you like modern? Do you like historic? Do you like sharp lines? Do you like round curves? That information will be used by the architect to help design the facade of the building. The other questionnaire is 10 concepts, basic site concepts, requesting feedback. And again, what we're looking for, they're not elaborate designs. They're not meant to be the final end product. They're meant to elicit responses and see how we can cobble together a design that works best for most. And I say for most because communication from community has upticked. And obviously, everyone has a different agenda, right? If you're in a butter, you may have one agenda. If you're somebody who just values, has a child in school, you may have more of a transportation in and out focus, right? So we're going to do the best we can to blend all of the priorities into a concept. So that's where we're working toward right now. Our next meeting as a committee is on April 20th. So for those listening, we are not going to have a meeting this week due to the spring vacation with schools. So the 20th will be the next meeting. We're really focused on that schematic design, so I urge people to tune in if they can't make it to the meeting. Field survey has started, so on-ground survey of both the existing high school property and CCMS has started by Garofalo, which is a subcontract to Studio Jade, our architect. So that's to get the base plan surveys done for the next phase of architectural, because we need to know what's out there. What's required as part of stage 2 is having an on-the-ground class 1 survey and topographic class 3 survey. We also need some geotechnical information on the site, assessments of the schools, so that's all ongoing and going to happen quickly over the next couple months as we gather more information on the stage 2. As I did mention, communications is uptick, and I will address, Mr. Beasley's here tonight, and I asked him to reach out to the council on the issue of the high school and use for affordable housing, because as I stated, this is a school project. We weren't tasked as a building committee to come up with an affordable housing project, right? So just like CCMS is still under the school district, and I appreciate that there are many competing priorities throughout the community for these projects, but the building committee is tasked by this body and the school committee to come up with the best project for the district, and I think we're doing that. So unless there's a change of focus, which I'm not hearing tonight, we're continuing on this track, and I will say that we are on tight timeframes. We, quite frankly, do not have a time to shift and pivot towards another project. This is it. And I think right now what I'm hearing is pretty good feedback from the community. The response is welcomed. While there's some concerns about the schematic design, I think overall what I'm hearing is well received. Unless you hear differently, I'm looking to that feedback as well. So with that, any questions that you have?
So I want to thank you for talking about the field survey, because I did hear from people today that people were walking through their property and no identification and no one knew what was happening. So, you know, when random people come to my door to try to sell solar or convert me, it's concerning. These people are saying they're walking around the high school area on private property. So not your fault, but I don't know how to prevent that, because we don't want to make the public mad about a project that we want them to be excited about.
Yeah, so I did get feedback from one resident today, and I have a call into the architect to, you know, politely remind him that this stuff is important, right? It's all important. How we communicate with the community is important. There was a little bit of a snafu on the survey because we decided at one point to narrow it down, and it wasn't ill-intentioned. The idea was there's 54 images that we had in person. We said, well, what if we, you know, if we take that down to 25, 26, would that be better? But one of the images that was key to the community was left out of that. So I made a decision. I called the architect once I was made aware of it and just said, you know what, let's just do the 54 images as shown. So I don't want there to be any fear of impropriety. With regards to the survey, I've reached out to the architect to have them do a better job of notifications for any other services at this point.
Well, they don't even
Shouldn't have been on the property.
I remember like when Northeast Reval comes around, they send you a card. They don't have, these people didn't have a T-shirt, a business card. So you're just like, sure, you're doing that. Which, if you're a senior citizen, you might not feel comfortable or you don't understand. So thank you. I just feel like that took me off guard that they had started so quickly. I guess it's good that it's school vacation week. Some people might be more likely to be around. But
Yeah, I 100% agree. So, you know, I can't undo what's already been done. All I can do is try to correct it for future.
So is there a way, how do you, I mean, how will people get notified
Of survey or anything else. So one is, I mean, we could put it out on the broad social media, but the ones most likely to be impacted are the direct abutters. So an easy way to do that is ask that anything be notified within 72 hours, whether it be hand-delivered to a door, or we decide, you know, we're going to get those addresses, which we're probably going to be using multiple times throughout the process, and getting those and sending them a mailer saying, hey, we're going to be on the property doing X, Y, and Z on certain dates, even if it's a range. So they at least know if somebody's walking around, and also identifying the staff. Listen, I came from a design background. They should know, surveyors should know, Garofalo knows, that they're going to be on somebody's property. They should be logoed up and be ready for those questions, which I did hear, which was a positive, that they were very polite. They educated the people around them, so that was a positive.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mike.
On the OPM, is there a RIDE-approved list that you're going from?
So not a RIDE approved list. We do have the master price agreement with the state, which has 30 names on it. The decision the building committee made, which was a little bit of a round and round discussion on this, all of the firms that have done work in Rhode Island on projects, school-related projects, are on that list. The committee decided to send it out to all 30. One concern I have on that is only because, having worked for a previous municipality that had skipped somebody or it went to a bad email, there was a contesting of the bid. And so, you know, that person said, well, you notified everybody else, but you didn't notify me. So the concern about putting out to the broader RFP is still in discussion. So we're talking about procurement. But the idea is to get it out as far and wide as we can.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Jim?
The second item on the town manager's report is looking at a review, a reorganization of the town council agenda. I've been in this position as a town manager for nearly a year. Another couple of weeks will be the anniversary. I've attended 22, 23 meetings, And it's taken me about this long to really see what we could maximize, minimize, and just make it better for the whole town. One of the people I really relied on was Susan Flynn, our clerk. She's been here for about 300 years, Susan, is that only the whole anniversary? No, but she's been here 30 years, and she has, you know, an institutional knowledge you can't replace. And we've sat down numerous times, what can we do to make this better, make it flow better? So there's some things I came up with. I gave you a template. You'll see a template in front of you. But before I go to that, I'll just say that, so what is the goal? The goal is to accomplish and finish the business of the town as quickly as possible before it's turned over and we go to 11, 12 o'clock, which has happened a couple of times in the past month or so. The example I used in the work session was, I think it was 2 meetings ago, at 11:24, the new business started. 11:24 p.m., 11:55 p.m., the new business pretty much ended, and one of the staff had to stay about 6 hours and gave a 2-minute explanation on a new business item and left. Now, this isn't about him. It's not, but it's just about the efficiency of getting the new business done in a timely manner, because it's important stuff, some of the most important stuff on the agenda. I will tell you up front, the question I asked is what overall would work best, but I will tell you up front that there's no one best way. There's a better way, but not the best way. You just, on any given night, what's on the agenda could determine did it work or it did not work. Looked at 3 different agendas: North Kingstown's, Narragansett, and Westerly. They were all a little different, but they all had common themes, including ours. And we're looking for efficiency. That's basically what it comes down to. So some of the things I want to give to the council tonight, just to think about, not make a decision on tonight, are these. Would you like, some communities have a countdown clock. That's one thing the council would have to decide if they want that. So what is that? Whatever is given to the person who's speaking, whether it's public comments, whether it's talking about whatever, they're given a certain amount of time, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, and the clock would count backwards. It's not, so it's like a buzzer that just stops them, but I truly think when you give public speaking, you can pace yourself when you see half the time's gone and I've only been through a third of what I need to say. I think it's helpful. It's helpful to me when I do it. Do you want time limits? For example, one of the communities has a time limit, 30 minutes only for public comment. That's it. So if someone got up there for 15 minutes, they use 15 minutes of that time. It keeps people honest, keeps the conversation moving. That's another thing that I would ask you to look at and see if that's something you want to do or not. The 3-minute rule, the 5-minute rule, something, once again, you need to decide, is it something that will change by the night, or is it something you want hard and fast? Just anecdotally, just to look at a typical night here, about a month ago, I had Susan look at it, just a meeting, any meeting, and there were 11 people that got up and spoke. They were given a 3-minute time frame to speak. Of the 11 people that spoke, only 4 spoke for 3 minutes or less. 7 spoke for 3 minutes or more. Of the 7, 2 spoke for 8 minutes, and 1 actually went to 12 minutes. So it's your decision, Council President, you run it, but you can just see sometimes it just goes on, and how far do you want it to go? There are some controversial topics that are going to come up. We had DLI, 6, 8 months ago. This place was packed with people. That public comment could have gone on all night if you wanted it to. Rental registration is going to be another big one. That's going to be a lot of people coming here voicing their concerns. Opera was one. The municipal court, cannabis was a huge one. So those are things to keep on the radar. We're not trying to stifle anyone's speech. No, that is not the purpose of this at all. So if you look at this template that you have in front of you, I'll just go over it real quick. So the first item would be, the first thing I also want you to consider as a town council is that from 7 to 7:30, we call it a work session. That's one of the first things I saw. Really, it's a rehearsal for the agenda. And that's fine, except for one thing. A lot of the best stuff that is said from 7 to 7:30, and the people usually don't turn the meeting on until 7:30. So all the stuff that I've said and the good questions you've asked me, well, why is this, what is this, I gave you the answer, and unless I recognize that that answer needs to be given again, or you recognize that there's something in there, it doesn't get said. So the council meeting, where most of the people watch, they don't get all the best stuff that they should be hearing. So one thing to consider, this council, is do you want to continue a 7 to 7:30 work session for that, the agenda prep, or would you rather have that half hour be dedicated to something I alluded to in the work session, where we have a schedule, and you can bring the planning board in on this date and time for a half hour to brief the council, BPAC another night, EDC another night, whatever presentation that you need more time, because one deficiency is that all these committees that we have get very little airtime with the council, and they do a lot of work. So that's one thing I'd like you to think about. Do you want to continue the 7 to 7:30 as a work session for the agenda? Or have the council president and I just go through it, like we normally do it before, so we can run the meeting and let it rip, and then just schedule people to come in on a normal basis, committees to come in. But if you look at this template, and this is what I would like to recommend, unless there's something on here that you strongly feel you do not want, and then let me know, we'll rearrange it. But I'd like to try it for one meeting, just to see if it works. And then maybe tweak it and try it again and move on from there. Well, you'll see that, you'll have a closed executive session, which usually be before the meeting, which we recently moved that to before the meeting, because 11, 12 o'clock, when you're exhausted, going to a closed executive session, it's tough to think straight. You would have the interviews first, because there's people that really need to, they come in on their own time, do the interviews quickly. The work session would follow right after that. But once again, it's not going to be the agenda. It's going to be the presentation to the council by the committee, whatever committee it is. The regular session would still start at 7:30. Pledge of Allegiance would stay where it is. The land acknowledgement statement would stay where it is. 4 would be the roll call, stay where it is. The approval of minutes, 5, stay where it is. So you can see that top part is pretty much very little change on that. So here's where the change starts. 6, consent agenda. So rather than putting consent agenda, CA, all different places on the agenda, put all the consent agenda items under consent agenda, so that the council looks at them, reviews them, and if they want something pulled from consent agenda, because they want more explanation on it, a vote or whatever it is, they could say, I pulled item 5, I'd like it to go to new business, which would then go to the bottom of new business. So consent agenda, everything would be lumped into one. 7 is licenses. You have people here talking about the licenses, get them in, get them out, for respect to them. 8, public hearings. We advertise for that. The town clerk was very adamant about that. We advertise for that at a specific time. It's very important that the public be allowed to come here at these hearings and know exactly when it's going to be. 9, this is a big move, new business. Go over the new business quickly. 10, the appointments. 11, the town manager's report. 12 would be the communications. Once again, the threshold for communications to the council, first, the residents of this town have to know everything they send to us, we send to the council. Nothing's filtered. The only thing that goes on the agenda, though, is if it requires council action. So this way you don't have 50, 60, 80 items that could be on there. Sometimes you get a lot of communications, but which ones are requiring action? Also, you get a lot of communications where residents are recommending someone for a position. And you have to decide, do you want every communication on there, or are you satisfied with council action gets it on the agenda? Or if a town council member sees a communication that goes to them, and you know you get them, a lot of them, you could call and tell me, I want this on the agenda, this has to be addressed. So it leaves leeway for the council to make an independent decision on that. Then, we changed the name from comments from interested citizens to public comments, because that's really what they are. And that's about it. So if you look at that template, is there anything that jumps out at you that you would not want to try for the next meeting?
I really don't want to do public comment at the end because I think a lot of people do show up for that and a lot of people have kids and work the next day. So I would like to put public comment immediately after new business and before appointments. A lot of times people who are staying for appointments, they know that they don't have to stay, so that can kind of go towards the end. The town manager's reports is fine after that, and then communications, if somebody has a communication item that they, really want to speak on, and they can come up during public comment instead if they have to really get out. But the rest, communications generally can stay towards the bottom, I think would work better for me. So just putting public comment right after new business.
I agree. I think if someone comes here at 7:30 and they have to wait 2 hours or plus, it's a long time. And then we did talk a little bit in the work session about how in the past, maybe 3 or 4 councils ago, you could ask a question about new business. A person who said, I want to ask about the dump truck, I want to ask about something, could ask a question. Previous president didn't allow that, so people were frustrated that they couldn't ask a question on a new business item. So I think we need to be aware that we would have to allow someone to ask a question about a new business item.
Yeah, and I don't think that people will do that often, but I think
I agree.
that it's a good,
We have to welcome them to ask the question about the purchase. So if there's no, if they're all speaking after we make many, many purchases, there's no opportunity to be
yeah,
heard.
so just a quick thing, when we, before we jump into new business, is there anybody who'd like to ask a question about? And just keep it to that. I don't think we're going to see a lot of it where it's going to eat up a lot of time. I just.
And to be fair, I appreciate when people come and speak, and I think the number of people that you reference with long public comments, that's a management issue, that's a leadership issue, not, and we all own that. It's Rory's running the meeting, but we can also help Rory out. I've said that to him, like, he doesn't have to be the only bad guy asking people to stop. It's on all 5 of us. So we know that we can do that and help Rory do a better job. I think you err on the welcoming side, so it's not your fault to be kind. It's a good quality. It just doesn't always work up here all the time. But I do think we need to slow people down when, they're reading a report. We need to say, we'll take the materials. People want to read something. It's a lot. It really should be, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
There was a few examples of that.
Yeah. So,
So we agree with Jess, we should move a few things around. I think appointments can go to the bottom, and maybe even the town manager's report could go last.
so under what we're looking at now, it essentially moves new business up to where communications is currently, moves communications down to where new business is currently. That's essentially what we're looking at.
I don't know, I'm not looking at the same one at the same.
So,
So
wait,
public comments would go after appointments, is that correct?
no, after new business, before appointments.
Oh, okay. So
Public
go
comments
after
would
new
be
business.
10. And then appointment, it doesn't, we all know, the appointments can go anywhere. They're flexible.
So we'd have to be comfortable moving communications down to the bottom.
Mhm.
And we'd have to be comfortable doing,
I would even say, Rory, not to the bottom. You could do, the 2 very last things could be appointments and town manager's report. So you're getting everybody who wants to speak out.
I agree.
Because we have to be here anyway for the appointments, and the town manager report. So
So we have to, under this, we have to be comfortable doing new business prior to public comment and also doing public comment prior to the manager's report. You know, now we have made changes such that we do the town manager's report first and then public comment happens thereafter. I'm just pointing that out for the structure here.
Right, but we also have, we have a communications type piece ahead of time. So if I've written a letter and then Jim says, I'm going to address that in the town manager's report, this concern of the resident, there's like
Okay,
a second cycle through, so.
I see. I see.
The only thing also about the town manager report, is there any way for Jim's update to be linked, a portion of it linked so that there would be shared with the community? Because otherwise, we all read your update, but
Well,
no
the
one
only
else.
thing I would say, there's stuff in there that relates to
Exactly.
personnel, there's,
Right, but you could parse it out and say, for public, and then link it, no?
listen, I'm not trying to hide anything from anyone, but I'm being open and transparent, so you know what's going on in the town. There is some confidential stuff on there. I mean,
Yeah, there's no way for that.
I don't, I
Well,
wouldn't
in
recommend
the
that.
past, a town manager put out a report, so we're getting that report?
That's why he's not here.
Well, Steve did too. Steve did a lot.
Well, listen, you tell me what to do. It's gotta be ethical and legal, and I'll do it. So tell me what you want, and I'll get it done. But you have to all agree on it.
Can we step back for a minute? Wasn't part of your concern about moving the town manager's report up is that we're keeping staff here all night?
Well, that's always a concern, but I'm not trying to insulate the staff. We know what we have to do to get the job done. That's fine. It's just, if there's a public comment that's going 2 hours, and we still got stuff below it that has to get done, you're here till midnight.
One of the goals here, Jim, is sort of move up new business. We're gonna add.
New business is quick.
Yeah, I got no problem moving that up. I have no problem essentially taking how we already do things and just move new business up after licenses.
There's a balancing act here. I agree with you. Public comment, you don't want to stifle them, stifle anyone. You just,
Why don't
but
we just do that then, Rory? Why wouldn't,
Licenses?
yeah, just do the simplest change,
Seems the most simple to me.
and then we don't have to
We
worry
gotta talk
about like
about it.
this, that, and the other, just move.
The only one problem is we act on new business prior to public comment.
And we could just say, when Rich comes up and he says, we are buying a dump truck, and interested citizen says, I'd like to ask you a question about dump truck. That's it. I think that's the simplest.
Fine,
All right,
yeah.
so that would be leave everything as is and move new business up to after licenses. So not as in what's on the draft here.
yeah, so public hearings is one of the most important things to keep timely. So,
So licenses, public hearings,
yeah, then we can move,
new business. That's what you have.
yeah, so keep new business
So,
9.
so 1 to 9 is fine, the way
Yep.
you have it on the draft,
Yeah.
and then just revert to the other.
And where do you want public comments? Under new business?
Wait. I'm not referring to the draft.
No, to our original.
I'm referring to how
Our
we
working
normally
agenda.
Oh, okay.
run things.
But that's what this is
So that
saying.
means communications doesn't get moved all the way to the bottom.
Correct.
It stays where it is. It's just after public hearing, we do new business. Then following new business is communications, I believe.
Yep.
Then town manager's report, then public comments, then appointments.
Sounds good.
Susan, do you want to go over go look at the draft and just put it in the order that we had it, so?
So in the draft, 1 through 9 is, the draft I see is 1 through 9 is fine, because that goes 7 licenses, 8 public hearings, 9 new business. And then, according to this,
And then
we go back to what we have currently, which would be, the next item would be communications.
Communications, town manager's report, town solicitor.
Or a solicitor's report if there is one, and then public comments and appointments would be the last item.
Mhm.
All right. Can you run that through us so I make sure we're on the same page here?
Okay.
You can begin with roll call.
Okay.
You have the
So,
draft?
Roll call, approval of minutes, consent agenda. Do you want all of the consent agenda items listed under that heading?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then we would have licenses, followed by public hearings. We will move new business up to that point.
To after public hearings.
After public hearings, we will then go to communications,
Yes.
town manager's report, solicitor's report if we have one, public comments, and appointments.
That's it.
Okay.
So.
Are we all comfortable with this?
One sec, possibly. Just the only thing we could flip-flop is public comment with communications. I think so too. Because if you, not everybody shows up for the communication item, but the public does show up if someone shows up to speak.
That's what I was suggesting before.
Okay.
Okay.
So 10 would be public comment or whatever. 10 would be public comment. 11, 12, town manager, town solicitor. And then 11, 12, 13 is communication items, and 14 is appointments.
So town manager's report, town solicitor's report, communications, appointments.
Mhm. We can try it.
Yeah, it's try it for a meeting, see how you like how it flows, and if you want to make a change, make a change.
We can also, which we don't do, we can also limit communication items to 3 minutes. Because in the past, people could,
No, it's hard to put that sort of restraint. Sometimes a communication item fills the room.
I know,
Sometimes they don't show up. So it's really hard to put a fine line.
I know, but when someone comes to the microphone, we could say, you have 3 minutes. I know, you're very nice,
I mean, a classic example was the land swap hospital.
exactly,
Communication item.
I know,
We couldn't shut out everybody.
right. But we could have said, you have 3 minutes to present and then come back and public comment. I know,
And they would have had to come up after we took
Yeah.
action on it.
I know.
So it's hard to put that restraint
I
on
know.
those.
Well,
Alright.
that's the same thing. It'll be the same thing. If there's a new business item that someone wants us to stop, they're going to be inserting themselves. You just see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
We can try it, though. Good to be open-minded and flexible.
I say let's try it. Give it a shot and see how it goes.
What do you want, do you want to try a clock or not try a clock?
I would love to try a clock.
Joe, I guess you guys need to give me a consensus.
So I personally love a clock for when I am public speaking, that I need that. I will bring my own to keep myself on track if I'm doing that. It can also have the effect of being intimidating and throwing people off when they're trying already nervous, if they're looking at that and then they're starting to lose their thoughts. So I think if people want a clock, everybody's got a phone and it's got a stopwatch on it. They can put that up themselves if they want it.
So that's a no?
I'm a no on
That's
the
a-
clock. I think,
Yeah, I mean, I think if people need it, they'll do it for themselves. I don't, but we do have to be on top of.
you can do it.
Do we want to,
I think we should try the.
how much capital investment would go into a clock? Is this something we could try a clock or?
One at home.
I mean, we could get an alarm clock and try that, but I'm just saying, realistically, it's about $150 to put a countdown clock in the room.
Do you really want to be the president who brings a clock? You can do it. You can do it.
I think it's important for us to take into consideration the people that are really engaged and watching this and stuck until midnight if we don't. I mean, I think, as somebody that has to speak sometimes, I like to know what's happening because I'm too nervous to look down at my phone. You know, if I have a speech, I have notes. I'm not keeping a stopwatch going, but if it's in front of me, then I like it. Because I think it's important that we're considerate to each other and the people that are in the audience waiting their turns. That's just my position.
The rules of conduct that we already have in place say 5 minutes once, and it also allows discretion to the president of the council to extend it. I think that covers it, so I don't think a clock is going to make a big difference. I mean, let me rephrase that. I think a clock would be helpful in keeping us to that rule of conduct.
All right. Do we want to try the clock?
So what we do with the school building committee is, someone has a phone, they put 3 minutes or 5 minutes, wherever, it is, and they hit it, and it goes off, and it works for the school building committee. I mean, you can try it that way with no capital investment.
All right.
I'm not monitoring the clock, though. That's,
I have every confidence that you can do.
Here's what we'll do. We did this a little bit in the last term with Abel. He had a phone that made a ding noise when the time went off.
That's what we're talking about.
So instead of an actual physical clock that you're looking at, it would just be the ding goes off, and that's the indication the amount of time has
Best of both
surpassed.
worlds.
There you go, Rory.
That's a good compromise.
Would anybody over there want to keep the clock so that we're one step removed from it? Anybody?
no, I mean,
I think that's the job of the council president.
I was only kidding. We can try the clock with I don't know how to do it on this phone, but.
I don't know, Abel and Rory did it all last time.
Right.
I don't really get why it's hard. The harder
Well,
part
I
is
think,
saying
well,
no.
the reason we're talking about it is because, you know, a lot of people have a lot to say, and sometimes it's not easy to, stay within the realm that you have, because when you want to say something, you're not thinking how much time is going by, you just want to get it all out there. And, we constantly have to sort of, interrupt them, remind them, could you sort of wrap this up, conclude? And that's why we're here talking about it.
So
because there's
maybe you
sort of been-
can suggest to people when they come up that, or before we start public comment, make a suggestion. We're limiting public comment to 5 minutes. It might be helpful for you to bring up your phone to keep you on track, just as a general statement to everybody. But I think a lot of people know to do that themselves. It's a fairly common self-accommodation.
Well, we'll continue to think about the clock. In the meantime, we'll do the dinging noise thing. Mike Ursillo, you can look into it.
I will do it. I don't mind. I'll do the dingy noise.
Mike majored in AV.
Dinging noise. We
Law
could
school.
all just be a chorus of dings, maybe.
But, so we'll hold off on the clock for now. We'll try the dinging thing,
Okay, timer, just,
timer, rather. And you got everything down as far as the change to the agenda, which we're going to explore.
Yeah, we'll try it next. Susan, you have all that, right? You took good notes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, great. All right, we're going to move on now. Next, we have the town solicitor's report.
Just quickly, as you all know, Speaker Joe Sakachi has introduced a 14-bill package of legislation aimed at, one of his main goals is to spur the construction of affordable housing. Some of those bills would have a direct impact on every municipality's zoning ordinance, subdivision regs, and land development regs. So it's important that we know what's happening with these bills. They're basically all sitting in committee right now, but my guess is that as we get to the end of the session, we're going to see lots of activity. My office is monitoring these on a daily basis, and what I'll be sure I do is that if they're going to come up for additional hearings or public comment or whatever, I'll get an email out to you for in-between meetings to let you know what's happening and keep you up to date on them.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
So I have a question. We talked about it in the work session. So Teresa Tanzi's a co-sponsor of 2 of these bills, and I didn't know, it made me think to ask, has anyone had any conversation with a rep or a senator about any of these bills going forward, or to have any additional information?
On these bills,
Mm-hmm.
I've read some of them. Yes.
Okay. So I was just wondering how you felt about maybe asking Teresa or someone to come invite, Teresa was great that meeting. She came, she spoke on 3 different subjects, asking them to come so that they give either insight, information. I know Mike's monitoring it, but we're not going to have a lot of time if these bills aren't really helpful. Some of them do eliminate local control of, our own planning and zoning. While I know some of them reduce steps and they expedite things, and the court, I think the land use court sounds really, really positive, because you certainly don't want things hung up for years. I liked the initial concept of that bill, so it would be interesting and important for us to understand what the bills are and not be flat-footed and go, we didn't realize this was all happening. Because in theory, the court sounds pretty good. You're nodding, right?
Or it does sound good.
Yeah, right? Because things get hung up in zoning forever and appeal. So perhaps we want to invite the legislators, or at least Teresa, to come in and talk about a couple of the bills so that we would understand them. Land use can be complicated.
And it's a nice opportunity for, the general public here to
Is your mic
get
on?
for the general public to get an update on those bills. I think that this is a good forum for that. I think they would appreciate that.
Mm.
Okay.
Do you think we could
So-
do that?
The request that you're asking here is to ask one of the bill sponsors to come in here and explain the bills to us?
Well, Teresa signed on to 2 of them, so sure. Why wouldn't we ask Teresa to come at least?
And I think she would love to do that too. She's always been good about speaking at meetings.
Okay.
I mean, I would invite any rep or senator who wanted to come and speak and tell us anything, because when she was here, it was extremely valuable. We learned about floods, we learned about bicycle transportation, she talked in support of the housing authority. She was up to the microphone 5 times.
All right, so you want to just invite one rep who has signed on to some of these bills to come to a meeting and sort of inform us what these bills entail, how it affects the town, and sort of what her outlook as to what's going to happen with these bills? Is that what we're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. That's fine. So what item of a meeting would we place that at?
You could do maybe she could come to a work session, or she could come
All right.
to a new business item, just presentation from Teresa, 15 minutes on what the housing bills are going through the state. I mean, we could ask them all.
Let's do that. We'll invite her. We'll ask her if she can come to a meeting to do that.
I would do the first meeting in May, because what's going to happen is there'll be this roller coaster.
There's going to
out.
be no activity on these bills until June, probably.
Right, so we should know what they are in May in case we want to take action on them.
All right, we'll send her an invite. We'll see what she says.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now moving on to public comments, or formerly known as comments from interested citizens. So at this point, I invite anyone who wishes to speak on any topic to come on up. I just ask that you first introduce yourself, and we'll limit you to 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Bryant DeCruz, South Kingstown. I wasn't planning on speaking today. I didn't even know it was on the agenda, but I'm glad I came. I believe that the clock that Jim mentioned would be a good idea, and the reason for that is that I believe the clock will give everyone the same amount of time, and it won't be up to whether or not you look down at your phone to see if they've gone to 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 or 10. And then if you have time, folks can come back up at the end of public comments. So if there's only like 3 or 4 people, there's no reason why you couldn't give them an additional, say, 3 minutes or even 5 minutes, depending on how much time is taken. The other thing that I was thinking about was in terms of the work session. I always felt that the work sessions, they're good, but I think people should be prepared before they come to the meeting and understanding exactly what's on the agenda. So if you could allow the committees to take up some of that time, I think that'd be awesome, because oftentimes you don't even know sometimes the folks that are on the committee, especially for the new people. And when I was on the council back then, I think what we said is, here we are appointing people, and some of these people I couldn't even pick out from a lineup. So we decided to have them come in, and it wasn't to be anything other than, hey, you know, who are you? What are your, you know, what's your background? What are some of the things you've been trying to fight for, or are there any difficulties, et cetera, that you need help with? So that way everyone knows who's on the committees. The original reason I was going to stand up and talk today, though, was when you guys started talking about affordable housing. This morning I was in a meeting with Speaker Sikarchi and Chris, I can't always pronounce his last name, Blackowitz, or something like that, yeah. He represents, I believe, the Fox Point section of Providence, and we were talking about affordable housing. So affordable housing is important, but what I started thinking about when you guys talked about spending more money on studying what affordable housing should look like in South Kingstown, I think in 2018 or 2019, we hired a consultant, paid them $100,000, so where's that report?
I ask that all the time.
I'm sorry?
I ask that all the time.
Yeah, so where's that report? I mean, $100,000 is a lot of money. So it's there, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of free resources throughout the state, and also at the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, even the National Association of Realtors, there's resources, and there's resources with other nonprofits in the state that put out things like the State Housing Handbook, or, I'm sorry, Fact Book, it's not the handbook. So there's a lot of information out there that you guys can get for free. Affordable housing is a big thing, and what I'm tired of is NIMBYism. And this morning in the meeting, what I mentioned when I was on the board of directors for Habitat of Rhode Island Greater Providence back from 2005 to 2013, when I left, we were building about 12 houses a year. But the problem I had, and I said it today in a meeting, was that, it's the timer, isn't it? Sorry. Just give me one more second. You can start the clock afterwards. So what I mentioned was NIMBYism is a real thing, and at the time I was on the board, I was the chair of the site acquisition committee, so I was the person buying land or houses that we were going to use for housing. The biggest problem I have is that people talk a good game, but nobody wants it in their own backyard, and that needs to stop because there's not enough housing, rents through the roof. Folks that want to live in our town can't live in our town, and there are children as well that can't afford to buy or even rent in this town. But going back to that meeting back in like 06, 07, my mouth dropped, and it doesn't happen normally, but it did. So here's the president of the board of Habitat, which I had nothing to do with putting him on the board, I just showed up, he was there. He lived in Lincoln, Rhode Island at the time, and we talked about maybe we should build in other communities. We brought up Lincoln, not in my backyard. I mean, here's the president of an affordable housing organization that does a lot of great work throughout the country, but also in other parts of the world. So I think it's time to stop talking about it, and I know that it takes money, and towns may not have the money, but there's other resources out there that we can utilize. There are things you can do. You can make zoning less restrictive. You can change density requirements in certain areas. There's plenty of tools in the tool bag, but you just have to want to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryant, and good to see you, and weird to see you on that side. All right, anyone else? Feel free to come on up. Since Bryant went first and he got about 5, we're going to allow everyone to get 5.
And we have this fancy new thing called the dingy thing, and we're going to be dinging it.
Start out with a question. Historical cemeteries in South Kingstown, who does the keep up upkeep on historical cemeteries. Is there a town ordinance on that?
That's a question for you, Mike.
Yeah, Susan's suggesting that she's not aware of one, but while he's speaking, I'll look to see if there's anything about who's responsible for historic cemeteries. I will tell you, in other towns, it's volunteers, it's Boy Scouts, it's Rotaries, that type of thing.
We've had residents come and, like Debbie Suggs spoke during the town farm park conversations, and she's interested in historical cemeteries. I know Ann Hazelwood in the community, she's involved, so there are people that do it as a community service.
Okay. Mr. DeCruz's comment on the town council addressing affordable housing, I actually found it on the internet, Narragansett Times, February 16th, 2018. You can look it up tonight when you go home, and you can read all about what you talked about then but haven't done since. So there's another part of the story, the affordable housing in South Kingstown, home of the University of Rhode Island. I believe our town is in decline. The land use policies were put in place 50 years ago. It's created a real estate market for the rich over the poor. After 4 decades of preserving open space, what buildable land left is available is unaffordable to anybody below the middle class. At the turn of the century, South Kingstown School District had 4,400 students. But when the lights go out in Wakefield for the last time in January, we'll have just 2,400 students when school opens, I believe, in September, in 5 schools, an astonishing 45% drop. There's no other town in this city or town in this state that comes close to what's happened here with our schools. If in fact that our children and grandchildren cannot afford to stay in their homes, in their hometown, isn't bad enough, the few neighborhoods in town where Black and Native Americans have lived have contracted, or been swallowed up by gentrification. South Kingstown still has the highest percentage and number of students of Narragansett Indian heritage in Rhode Island, but both quantifiers continue to drop. This year, in our schools, we have a total of 60 Indigenous students and 51 Black students, a total of 111. If you divide that by 13 grades, that averages out to 8.5 kids per grade. There are 17 students listed as homeless this year in South Kingstown in the school district's numbers. That number was 11 last year and 5 the year before. In a town of so much wealth, that is unacceptable. And the diversity of South Kingstown, which appears on the U.S. Census download, is an illusion, because the preponderance of that diversity resides not in our town, but on the campus of URI. If you looked at the numbers in your budget, the 23-24 budget, you'll see a little graph, and it shows what age groups have the most growth and what have the most decline. The ones that have the most growth are 15 to 19. That targets the students that are living on campus at URI, and 65 and over, of which I'm a member. Every other age group in that graph is in decline. Being the home of home community of University of Rhode Island brings its own set of problems, with off-campus housing in short supply, sky-high rents, single-family homes, and frequently converted to rental units. Okay, to wrap it up, when I was up here earlier, the comments about candidates who receive the most votes in an election should be given deferential treatment. Well, Ms. Bergner was a top vote getter the last 2 times, and she was disregarded.
Dorald?
Yep.
That was the dinger. That was the 5 minutes. just want to politely conclude?
Yep. Okay, in conclusion, at the last two meetings on the school committee vacancy, the appointment process, I believe, was sham to anybody who was here. They could tell, I could tell, that members of this council had conferred away from this chamber. So for you to say that you believe that the way it was connected is the best method, I believe is ludicrous.
All right, anyone else in the audience wish to come up and speak? I invite you to come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. Just a minute to, which we all should be thankful for, but good news. Governor McKee has signed probably the best bill that our community and most of the state appreciates for probably our most important business, and that's hospitality. And thanks to Representative McEntee and Senator Alano DeMario and Narragansett, North Kingstown, the governor signed. You can't realize just how important outdoor dining is, whether it's our downtowns, a pizza shop, a Brickley's, or really fine dining, but to have that available again outside on the sidewalks and the streets is very important. Probably the most visible aspect for business in the state of Rhode Island. So many thanks to the three of those folks. Back to affordable or workforce housing that I like to think about now and then. I don't know if you noticed, it just caught my eye last week. I grabbed the last newspaper today. By QBC, that's the Quonset Business Corporation, has been asked, I think they were asked first by the town of North Kingstown, but they're considering putting up 120, I'm going to call them workforce housing available lease to rent buildings. Be about 20 per acre, as high as 4 stories. 6 acres would be used for those 120 units. Apparently those units are the same height as the, I don't think it's a Holiday Inn up there, but it's an inn when you first go into the park up there. Very, very important because this is a change after living, 18 years since the Quonset Point Corporation was developed and approved by the state. It was supposed to be all commercial, and a number of businesses at Quonset Point have, and I'll read you a paragraph in a minute, have suggested that they'd be willing to look at affordable housing on this property. And let me just read you one line here. This is Electric Boat, probably phenomenal business, and you can ask the kids that graduate from Charahoe, kids from graduate from our colleges. General Dynamics is a tremendous hiring business. But it says here, they added that, this is the QBC, they added that Electric Boat has been hiring extensively and is currently accommodating new hires in local hotels for 30 days. After that, they must find housing, which is not available in North Kingstown or surrounding communities. That's the key, workforce housing. You said it there. Obviously, the question is going to be, how do you parcel out? Not all the units will be more than a couple or a single person, but obviously there'll be some children in there. They're working on the who's going to be responsible will be the North Kingstown schools. Doesn't sound like to be a lot of children, but that could be a cost that might have to be shared by the state and the QBC folks. But very important, because a lot of times we forget with our enthusiasm about housing, places like North Kingstown, the base and off base, Middletown, Newport, they've provided, and why they're ahead of the curve up towards that 10% is because they have all that naval housing that was available you know, the CBs, if you can remember. Maybe you're not as old as I am, but a lot of housing off base. Same thing in Middletown and Newport with the Naval War College, the ships that used to be there. Tremendous amount of housing that got converted into a lot of affordable housing, so there was an advantage there. Same thing with 200 years ago. Providence, Pawtucket is where you worked. It was on the river, on the Blackstone. The mills operated. People had to walk to work, and that's where the housing was needed. So I think we have to be cautious on damming communities that are not up at that 5 to 10% rate, because we're doing the best that we can. But some communities have already, when they first put the law into effect, 5 cities and towns were already there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right. Anyone else in the audience wish to come on up? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on.
So I just wanted to, when we were inviting Teresa, I just wanted to add that we could invite all of the reps and senators to come at that same meeting. They're going to all vote on those things. I have no problem being, casting a wider inclusive net. So I didn't want to slight any rep or senator who would want to come and talk to us about any matters of concern. So I'm open to adding to that. I don't know if people would want to, but we could just say we're going to talk about these bills and you can talk about it too.
I think it would be wonderful to give everybody the opportunity to come and present their bills, because they're representing us in our communities, so I think that's a great idea.
10 seconds.
Add that.
Go ahead, Jim.
The House and Senate are busy Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so Monday nights are available to have a representative here. In most cases, many are busy, but there are seasons like ours with the budget, but they are available Monday nights. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Limit it to the housing bills, and then another time, I like Patty's idea about all their legislation. We could, you know, Mrs. McEntee did the take it outside extension, you know.
Okay.
So.
All right. Cool.
Is that helpful, Susan? She's writing.
Okay. Gonna move on. Number 11 here, appointments.
I make a resolution to appoint Susan Walsh to the Zoning Board of Review.
Second.
Motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I make a resolution to appoint.
What? Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. Go ahead.
I make a resolution to appoint Robert Cagnetta to the Zoning Board of Review.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us down to item 12, new business. A is a resolution endorsing House Bill 2023 H5639, an act relating to education, federal aid that would establish a statewide universal school breakfast and lunch program in Rhode Island public schools through participation in federal programs to offset the costs.
We did talk about this at a school town council joint work session on the budget, and we talked about getting behind this as a way to address the needs in our community, and I make a motion to approve item 12A.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item B, a resolution authorizing an award of bid to George Sherman Sand and Gravel Company of Curtis Corner Road, Wakefield, for the purchase and delivery of beach replenishment sand in accordance with all bid specifications at an amount not to exceed $11,000, and as further described in a memorandum from the Director of Leisure Services to the Town Manager dated March 29, 2023.
So every year, we do approve this purchase for supplementing the beach sand that gets washed away from erosion. Terry's not here, but hope I did that part justice.
Yep, this is a good one.
I'll make a motion to approve 12B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item D, resolution authorizing an award of contract to Acuity Brands Technology Service Incorporated in Georgia for maintenance of Itron software and networking at the specified pricing of 64 cents per fixture per month for a 5-year term to be paid from the streetlight maintenance account, and as further detailed in a memorandum from the Public Services Director to the Town Manager dated March 29, 2023.
Motion to approve 12D.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. All right, that passes. That'll bring us to item G, a resolution authorizing a 2-year extension of the original 5-year lease between the town of South Kingstown and Bruce Thunberg, doing business as Twin Peaks Land and Cattle Company of Matunic Schoolhouse Road, Wakefield, to farm an approximately 22-acre parcel of property from December 31, 2022 through December 31, 2024, at the annual fee of $2,500. Said property being a portion of AP 92-2 Lot 39 as further identified on Town of South Kingstown GIS map number PL 14-76 dated 12/14, and as further described in a memorandum from the Director of Planning to the Town Manager dated April 6, 2023.
Motion to approve item 12G.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No. That passes. It's going to bring us to item H, a resolution authorizing the Town Council President to submit letters of support for the town's applications to the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation for the Site Readiness and Streetscape Improvement Fund Grant Program for proposed streetscape improvements to Wakefield and Peacedale and site readiness facade improvements to Matunic Market LLC located at 151 Old Tower Hill Road, Wakefield, as further described in a memorandum from the Director of Planning to the Town Manager dated April 6, 2023, and entitled Letters of Support to RI Commerce for Site Readiness and Streetscape Improvement Fund Grant Applications for Wakefield and Peacedale Streetscape Improvements and Site Readiness Facade Improvements to Matunic Market. Jamie, come on up.
I thought you may just say motion to approve the resolution. Just for clarity, the town submitted last Wednesday on April 5th 2 applications to Rhode Island Commerce Corporation. The first application was the town of South Kingstown. It was under the Streetscape Improvement Program. What we were looking to do is utilize the ARPA program and the work we've done with Weston and Sampson, and utilize that data and apply for a grant application associated with an $850,000 project, where we would be asking Commerce for $620,000, and we would be matching that with $230,000 for streetscape improvements. We're looking at improvements in both Peacedale and Wakefield as part of that program. Is there any questions on that application? The second application was by Perry Rasso. It's for facade improvement program under the site readiness category. That application was also submitted on April 5th. There may be a question of why didn't they submit the application directly to Rhode Island Commerce. Rhode Island Commerce actually required them to be vetted by the town and submitted in essence on town letterhead. That project is a little over $3 million in construction associated with the building, and the request was for $150,000. Under the grant application for both of them, they allow 3 letters of support. Our recommendation on these applications were to get recommendations and letters of support from Town Council, Planning Board, and EDC.
All right.
Any questions?
I have a question, but I looked over it. It looks like it's going to be beautiful. I can't wait for it to get going.
So I just had just a organizational question. This packet that we have is not linked on the agenda. Is that, can it be so that the public can see it?
We could do that.
Okay. Because I think the streetscape project is really, something that we had been working on, and I think that it shows that we're leveraging a small amount of money. Jim's, I think this is one you talked about, like we could get a 3-to-1 match. You've been saying that for a while, right? This is the one that you've been saying that we could apply for?
It's actually, it could be up to 4-to-1, but this is a portion of that. So
Right.
Jamie and I sat down, $3.2 million. 3.5?
We had 3.5 originally.
0.5, but this particular grant would leverage, they said 500,000, we asked for like 800,000.
Right, right. So, and these designs that we're looking at, are these the Weston and Sampson designs?
Those are from Weston and Sampson. They're from a draft this past fall that we have been vetting through the early months of 2023. One of the items Weston and Sampson would like to do is have a workshop with town council. That may need more than half an hour before your meeting, so some of the dates we've suggested are May 1st.
Okay,
For our town council, that is a Monday.
okay. And so, can I keep talking, or does someone else want to have a turn? Okay, so the Matunic Market project looks beautiful. It's very attractive, so I definitely think it's going to be a positive impact. I think the question that people would ask, and there's no way to, I don't want it to sound this way, but how did this happen for Mr. Razzo as opposed to like any other person? Because people want to be like, I would like that. Like,
I think because he just went out and applied for it.
I understand, but we need to say that to the community. It's not for
Right.
me, it's for other people to say, how did Perry get that? Because I would like that. Look at the opposite side of the street, that restaurant, the old Chen's, it just, like. Yeah, Bombay Flame. So like, just, if you could answer that for the community, how did Matunic Oyster Bar, Matunic Farms come to get this grant? Why, or how could someone else?
I will do my best to answer that. Mr. Razzo is also in the audience
know.
this evening. Under the Site Readiness Grant, it's really structured for economic development and job creation of either vacant or underutilized sites. And the criteria contained within the Site Readiness Program has a certain acreage criteria, it has a certain job creation criteria, as well as a dollar amount associated with the project. In a governor's press release, there was a mention of a facade improvement program within the site readiness. It is not specifically referenced in the application process. Mr. Razzo noticed that in a press release and approached the town manager's office in the planning department and said, if I do all of the application aspects of it, it needs to basically go on our letterhead. So it was, the governor did announce it. It wasn't announced to the town, it was announced to the business community. Mr. Razzo reacted to that announcement to the business community and took advantage of this. This does not undermine our ability within the American Rescue Plan. We have 1.5 million still allocated to that facade improvement program. And in fact, if he could get that 150 out of this program, that frees him up, in essence, from not applying for other.
Oh, I know.
I guess he could apply, but potentially it's another 150,000 on top of the 1.5 million that we potentially have.
Oh, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. In fact, it could look like the EMS building, right? It looks really nice. Just a question about parking, and I always felt like that was the issue there, but I guess it's for another venue. Like, is there enough parking for the amount of traffic that will go
So
in?
we have advised the landowner in any application process associated with building this development to fruition that we need to react to a site plan that shows how the building is going to be utilized. We understand there's a restaurant and retail component. Mr. Razzo, based on my understanding, is still working on the percentages of that and how many tables, how big the retail is. Within the retail component, there's a fish aspect to that. And again, we haven't seen a solidified floor plan that we can react to with regards to what he needs for zoning and any parking. I know Mike Orsillo has been in contact with their legal counsel, and we're trying to advise them and navigate them through the process.
And Mr. Razzo's legal counsel is aware of what is necessary to be filed with the town. It just hasn't been filed yet because they're still working on it.
Again, I think as a director of planning, these are two good, viable projects. Hopefully, we'll be successful in the grant application. One program Mr. Manny mentioned before is Safe Street for All. The Rhode Island Transit Authority did receive a grant, just $5 million. I think they're in final negotiations for receiving that money and doing contract negotiations for services. That may be 12 to 18 months. One thing I will point out, we were advised not to apply independently as a town. The city of Providence applied independent and received in excess of $10 million for a project. So maybe we should apply at some point in time also. Because they're
Thank you, Jamie.
So I'll make a motion to approve 12H.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second. I have a
We have a
question.
second. Any discussion?
Just a question. Did you say that the planning board had already seen this? Because did they meet before?
No, so in our grant application,
Okay.
due to the timing of the application, I have a two-sentence disclaimer that due to the timing of the submission of the application, we'll be submitting support letters in the next 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'll just say, Perry Rassel's in the crowd. Thank you for coming. Thank you for finding this grant application. We're happy to be a conduit to allow you to get some grants to ease the burden of these construction costs, and we look forward to what this looks like when it's up and running down the road.
It's going to be a huge improvement from what's there now, so thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? That passes. Perry?
Good luck.
All right, that's going to bring us to item I here, a resolution directing the town manager to undertake a feasibility assessment of the South Road School property to determine highest and best use of the current building and/or site and prepare options for the future use or disposition of the property to be presented to the town council prior to further action, as further described in a memorandum from the Director of Administrative Services to the town manager dated April 6, 2023. All right, Luke, tell us what's going on here.
All right, so last council meeting, I went through an update of what the existing conditions were of the South Road School. And I said that we'd be coming back for further direction at that time. So what I've recommended in the memorandum is essentially the next steps in the process. I want to take it through a very transparent, methodical process, right? And part of that is looking at what could happen with that site. What are the limits? What are the boundaries? What would you want to part with if you did want to part with the property? Or what other uses could that building and property be used for? So that's really our next step in the process, is determining that. Good question came up earlier, I know, about funding this. I'll be straight, I don't know yet. I did look while we were waiting into the town manager's budget and also the council budget this year, but we've kind of leaned out the budget. And those items, as you know, the past couple of years, the miscellaneous items have gone away, which you typically use for things like this. So my next step would typically get with the finance director, where at end-of-year projections, we'll look at what we have in different potential buckets of unused money and taking money from departments and putting it together. As I say, get the shovel out. But I'm confident we can figure something out to make this happen, but it's really, we're looking for that direction to validate, and we'll continue to do this through the process. You're part of the decision-making process, as you should be, on making sure that it's clear and open to the public on, we're taking this step to do the exploration phase, then we'll come back with the options. And my intent also would be to involve the Recreation Commission, because with the recreation facility so close, and we know what will happen with the previous school process and that interface, I want to be very clear on what those recommended boundaries, if we were to dispose of the property, would be. I think it's prudent to bring them into the process early. That way you have their advice. We'd come back, make those recommendations regarding usage or potential property disposed of and what we could be disposed of. And then the next steps would be appraising those different footprints and then coming back on disposal if you were going to dispose of the property. And again, that's not to say that it couldn't be used from some other use, but as I iterated in the previous meeting, the building's pretty worn. It's going to take quite a bit of upgrade. I am interested in looking at it, but I'm not especially hopeful that it could be reused for a purpose, but I may be proved wrong. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you for.
All right, thank you, Luke.
Okay.
Motion to approve 12I.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item J here. A resolution requested by Councilwoman Bergner to direct the Planning Department and Planning Board to initiate a review of the zoning ordinance and draft amendments to align medical marijuana regulations with recreational cannabis regulations. Deb, go ahead.
Sure. I said in the work session, and I'll say it here, that we did hear clearly from the public who had concerns about where we were going to locate recreational cannabis. So hearing that, listening to their concerns about impact, if you just recall the number of people who spoke about Old Tower Hill Road and the cut-throughs and the parking, we made a change there. We made changes in Fairgrounds Road area, Frank Ave. So I'd like to sort of go back, because this council of five, and not even the previous council, I don't think, set the zoning regs for medical. It was set in a prior, maybe your first term, Rory, I'm not sure. So I'd like to go back and have them look at it and possibly align the areas to be more closely, so there's not a big discrepancy, because that's where you get a lot of agitation. Why is this and why not that?
Mike Ursullo, are there legal barriers to doing that?
No, it's ultimately will be up to the councils, excuse me, as to whether or not you want to amend the ordinance to align them, as Deb is suggesting. But you need a recommendation from the planning board on that.
Okay.
I just would want to be aware of existing businesses, and I wouldn't want to put onerous regulations or push somebody out of business, because I think we've heard from Jim O'Neill on various occasions that, you know, some of these businesses are really having a tough time, so I don't want to make that worse for them.
I don't think that there are any, I could be wrong, any existing businesses there. I think, yeah, we obviously don't want to push somebody out who's already there, but I do think that it makes sense to sort of align the two.
Jamie, can you come up and speak to us here?
Sorry, Jess, keep going.
No, I think if Jamie has insight as to that, if you can, do you know of any businesses that are in that in-between?
There are 2 existing medical marijuana grow facilities.
Do they fall in
They're on the,
do they fall in the recreational cannabis zone? Or are they
would
outside?
fall within the overlay zone for the recreational cannabis.
Yeah, so we wouldn't push anybody out.
In the West Kingston area.
Right. But I think it makes sense to align those. I mean, we heard loud and clear from folks about that, so.
I would imagine that someone who's growing medical could eventually grow recreational. So you want,
absolutely.
you want the same uses in the same areas. So rather than expand, because we spent all this time making recreational a little bit smaller, just matching. Seems kind of simple.
Let me pose a hypothetical to you, Jamie. So let's say medical marijuana dispensary opens in the areas right now that are zoned for it. It doesn't fall within those areas that are zoned for adult use recreational. So if it attempts to get a hybrid, would it need a special use permit from the town or a variance or something like that? Or would it state law preempt that and they have the ability to go hybrid irregardless?
No, I don't think state law would preempt that. So the 2 primary differences between recreational cannabis sales and the medical marijuana are, we have the overlay district. So just from a growth perspective, you retracted the area for recreational cannabis in West Kingstown. So it's smaller, it's about 2/3 of the size of the industrial area. Medical marijuana is allowed to be grown anywhere in that IND1 zone, which is the whole industrial area. We could, not to oversimplify it, you could just put medical marijuana as another use within that overlay, given the existing boundaries of the recreational grow areas. The only difference there is you do not allow testing or manufacturing in any other industrial district in town. It's only limited to West Kingstown. When you did recreational, you allowed testing and manufacturing in 3 additional industrial zones. So if you're going to mirror that, you are expanding the manufacturing and testing to 3 new industrial zones. You could limit that also, basically have a medical marijuana overlay 1, which would just be there, and you would eliminate the medical marijuana manufacturing and testing in the 3 other IND zones. From a retail perspective, you allow medical marijuana facilities in any highway commercial zone, in essence, that's located along Old Tower Hill. You could mirror what you did for recreational cannabis and shrink or reduce the area, and again, mirror the overlay district for recreational cannabis. It's work to do that. It's a lot of legal notices and notification, but it's not necessarily a heavy lift on the regulatory side with regards to language, because we have the model. We did that for you a few months ago.
My feeling is we heard loud and clear from the residents, and I would like to recognize their work and make some changes to reflect hearing that, because they all came out. Once we resolved issues, it was another area that came and lobbied. We need to be responsive. There are concerns about the areas. I don't think it's a bad idea to relook and realign.
Again, I will say from my part, the heavy lift isn't in the planning department. The heavy lift is Susan Flynn, who may be required to notify another 600 or so residents with regards to those overlay districts for changes.
My specific questions, I think, are really more for the manufacturing and testing facilities that may be open in the mills. I'm just kind of going from memory. I feel like we did a really thorough job on West Kingston and the area around the mall, the Wakefield Mall. But like I said, I don't want to see any companies that exist that present, and I don't know that there are any. I thought there were some in the mills that do testing.
No.
There aren't?
There's only, again, 2 grow facilities just on the east side of the Amtrak rail line in West Kingstown, north of 138 on Frank
Okay.
Ave.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, there are no other retail outlets for medical marijuana or recreational marijuana. Permits haven't been issued, and there's no testing or manufacturing that I'm aware of in town.
Okay.
All right.
So I would like to make a motion to,
Approve the resolution.
yes, approve the resolution, or to refer it to, or what do we need to do to move this forward? What's the language?
Approve.
Just approve it? Okay. So I make a motion to approve 12J.
Thank you. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just say a few thoughts here. I think, obviously, it is good for us to take into account a lot of the concerns that we have heard up to this point with respect to recreational cannabis and the cultivation, the testing, the manufacturing, and the retail sales. I do think it's important that we understand that there's almost like 2 different industries here. There's adult use recreational and there's medical. I do believe one is more for a medical purpose, whereas one is obviously for recreational. I think it's important to distinguish that those 2 sort of exist at the same time, but are also not the same. But sometimes facilities do offer both. But, in light of all that, and under the understanding that there's no businesses that operate in a zone that's not already zoned, allowing for recreational, I think it's okay that we can move forward toward sort of mirroring these. So I'm good. Any other thoughts? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right, that passes. This meeting is over.
So
Have a good week, everyone.
if anyone